Hello and welcome to the GSL. We have an exciting lower division game today. My name's Anthony Malum. I'm going to be joined by Kaizo, and our production today is Rosie. And we've got the two top teams, Kaizo. And look at that L column. It is empty for both of them.
Yeah, both of these teams 3-0, Anthony. Both of them got 6 points here at the top of their respective division, and quite a bit far ahead of anybody else, frankly. If you take a look, you've got a 5 point differential between these two teams and the people trailing behind them. So these are sort of the titans of this league right now, a clash of the titans, if you will, in this division, and should be exciting to see who ends up on top of this one.
And what's even more fascinating when you start to dive into the player by player matchups is that on the GSL Twitter for last week, the team of the week consisted of all five members being from these two teams, which is
Yeah,
just ridiculous.
they're doing their thing, man, you know? Like you can say a lot about whether or not the excuse me, if the results are showing up, but very clearly the individual performances are there. This isn't those teams that you see a lot of where it's like, "Oh, well, it's just this one guy and then the rest of the team is just sort of there." This is very clearly two teams that are stacked top to bottom and you don't have a weak link in the chain to swing at. So you're going to have to take them down altogether. And that's honestly the best way to play Smite, in my opinion, because there's so much more interesting macro development that has to go into each of these sets if everybody is doing their thing correctly, as opposed to just trying to target one weak link or shutting down one strong player. This is definitely going to be a matchup to watch.
Yeah, it's going to be borderline required, but it's time to actually look at what we've got picks and bans wise, and it's shaping up to be more than interesting so far. A lot of stuff is already sticking out at me, especially a Ymir, but I'll let you pick through what tickles your fancy.
Watch your head.
Well, for me, it's going to be the Robin because we've seen a lot of Robin bans recently, and seeing him actually getting through into the pick phase is a little bit surprising to me. The Kali Bakasura is new, or at least the Kali is. The Loki is definitely new. That must be a target ban if I'm
Correct.
taking a guess, because I don't see a whole lot of Loki, don't see a whole lot of Bakasura. The Kali is something that people think is the strongest non tank jungler right now, it would seem. Although this Robin certainly has that flex potential to go into that role as well. Based on
Today
the
I
draft
am
that LW
judge,
have here, I'm
jury, and
assuming it's going to be Robin
executioner.
solo, but can play either one of those roles as he did in the yesteryears of Smite back when this character was the last time he was this strong. Just so much shielding to work with. It feels like you're whittling down two, sometimes even three different health bars to lane against this guy. Very frustrating to deal with, even for something like a lane bully like this tier.
To answer your question, yes, the Loki is a target ban, and what I want to point out, because it plays perfectly off of what you just said, with the Robin being flex and a Wheelish being picked as well, Garrett, the jungler for LWUB, last week went absolutely bonkers on a Thanatos, of all things, which really stuck out to me as a bombshell kind of performance because Thanatos isn't exactly top of the meta right now. And to see that completely captured my attention.
Yeah, Thanatos is a feel god for sure. It's the Sam for soccer at Worlds where this isn't a character anybody else has been playing pretty much at all, and then you go against it one time and you're remembered exactly why this character was so strong. It can pub stomp games. It has the potential to get a very small lead and run away with it very quickly. It's one that you got to keep an eye on, and I think that in the same conversation as this pick, where you get a very small lead on a character like this, and if you're not careful, you can absolutely just start heading for the hills with even the smallest of additional advantages. Pressing your lead with this style of character is so much simpler than it would be on honestly most of the meta stuff right now. It feels like you have to put a lot more work in, but it also feels like you get a whole lot of return for it.
A lane that's going to require a lot of attention and work from both teams is the duo lane, particular the carries. Both of these carries last week were ranked 1 and 2, with one going to Cheeto on Order of the Blight and two going to Storming Shadows, who jumped up notably from the bottom of the charts. So, what I'm interested in your take of Charybdis versus Izanami is not something we see super commonly. Normally, they're kind of responses to other people, never a response to each other.
Sure. The Charybdis is a very safe pick, and then it's one that in a team fight will typically try to avoid fighting as much as possible. It has very good safety tools. We're looking at things like the Whirlpool form that can make you untargetable and also immune to damage, which is a very notable point because you've got things like the Merlin tick damage, you've got the Terra ult that you can just completely immune and prevent from going on to you at all. And that's something that a lot of people typically forget about is even if you've got like an Ares ult, a Nuwa ult, as long as you get into that Whirlpool form in time, you are immuning all of that in its entirety. Whereas across the way, Izanami is a very good, safe tool in lane just because she clears the wave very effectively, but has a much more present feel in the team fight where you have to keep an eye on her. If you let her get those cleave auto attacks swinging through the team fight, it's going to start eating through your team much more quickly. It's the difference between a lane bully that goes into the team fight stage and has a lot more splash damage versus the Charybdis, which has a little bit of a safer lane just due to the safety tools inherent in the kit, and then transfers into be a much more single target character that wants to focus down just the tier, just the Terra, just the Thor. You're looking at 1 to 2 characters at a time with this Charybdis, whereas the Izanami sort of just throws out the auto attacks and whoever it hits, it hits.
Safety versus lane clear. Two juggernauts here to fight for us in the lower division. Let's head into game between LWUB and Order of the Blight. And as we see, the buffs are on the way. The gamers are ready to game. My name's Anthony Mellon once again, joined by Kaizo. Very excited for this. And Rosie will be clicking buttons on the camera. Let's do it.
Let's sink our teeth into it, man. And immediately as we go in, I'm once again looking at this solo lane. We briefly touched on it on the desk segment, but I want to go back over and highlight it because Tyr is sort of a menace in his own right. I know I gave a lot of attention to this Raven. He was the top overall pick. He gets a lot of bans right now. That shift in his passive, giving him the additional shielding, seems to make him a top solo laner right now. But Framdir on this tier is no slouch either. This is one where if you aren't paying close attention to it, has the potential to not only prevent your backline from playing the game, prevent them from honestly finding any sort of safety in these team fights, but also has the opportunity to kill them. You can see both of these solo laners going for the Bluestone Pendant, which does help out their early clear, yes, but once we get to the late game stage, that Bluestone Brooch does significant damage to everybody in front of them. You got the flat damage as well as the percent damage on top of that. It's really an all-around offensive damage item as opposed to things like the Sigil of the Old Guard, which we've been seeing a lot more of, the Sundering Axe, which we saw a lot of a couple of weeks ago. This is a much more aggressive option. They're not as safe over there, but they certainly can swing a whole lot harder.
And the swinging a lot harder is something that Framdir is banking on, going the blink over the teleport. So they're going to look to make some plays happen, but could ultimately risk out on losing a lot of farm if things go south. And the first play looks to be a totem. Framdir above half, but safe. But again, with the minions tanking as well, you got to play it safer without this teleport. Now he might be overplaying his hand quite a lot with the onslaught and the kick. It's a first blood for LWUB.
Framdir just tries a little bit too hard to secure that totem. We'll see a blink here in the mid lane, auto attack off the mark, and actually transformation aggressive here from this Merlin.
And they're looking good on Garrett so far, who got really stalled out by the stun from Blue. It was nicely placed, and probably Safa should be majorly thanking his jungler right now.
Yeah, that was a great wall for the peel there, but going back over to that solo lane interaction, Framdir steps up too far trying to get that totem, and the entire time Zoriad is just focusing him down with the auto attacks. That's what Raven is so good at right now, is using his abilities to clear the wave and hit you, and then also stacking up that passive via the auto attacks. Gives him some shielding, and also hits pretty darn hard, as Framdir learned here, and trying so hard to get that early totem, which your mid laner loves, your ADC is going to love that as well, your jungler, depending on their starter option, might also need that additional mana sustain. But at the end of the day, man, it's just not worth losing your life for early on. Framdir doesn't have the best safety tools right now, and as soon as both of those dashes go down, you could see it click in Zoriad's head that, wait a second, I can just go for this kill right now. And he certainly managed to notch it there. Won't be able to pressure the blue buff or get anything else off the back of it, but Totem and a First Blood is certainly a scary position for this Raven.
It's going to be a climbing point from here, certainly. And we saw that Blue got a bit aggressive in the jungle, actually, which is surprising considering Order of the Blight was not set up the best for Thor to get aggressive in the enemy jungle, but did get a back camp, did not get a blue buff invade, though was peeking for it. Faramdir, thankfully, did get their own blue buff. And aside from solo, the rest of the map has been very calm. We saw that one little scuffle in mid lane. And we talked a lot about duo. Do you expect the junglers to make their way over here at any point, or do we expect to kind of just let this lane phase play out?
The Willish kind of needs to. Garrett needs to find. Okay, home sweet home for wave clear. I guess we're doing that now, or maybe not. It looked like an accident, so we'll turn our attention away from that. But back to Garrett, he's kind of got to get involved early on. Willish is very good around the 10 to 15 minute mark, and then sort of falls off a little bit. Not quite as hard as people seem to believe, but certainly wants to get involved earlier if at all possible. As soon as you get this transcendence that both these junglers are going for stacked up, could look to play aggressive.
Aggressive with the blink, but Sappho was prepared for it and just flickered away calmly, not really too worried about it. Now Garrett doesn't have the blink, but Blue very low at the oracles. However, not going to turn into a fight. Garrett not going to play as aggressive there. Maybe if the blink was up, we could have seen something crazy, but again, used it in that mid lane. And you're not going to out-rotate a Thor either. So Garrett has to be proactive and try to kind of get in the head of Blue and figure out where the Thor is going to intend to go throughout the whole game.
He does, and I think that the dual lane is probably your best bet for finding that attention, just because it's very safe even if the jungler follows you over. I like to call it counter jungling a lot, where you watch to see what the enemy jungler does, and then you counter rotate on, get that good secondary engagement after all their buttons are down. The dual lane is a very safe place for you to do that. Charybdis doesn't die super easily to Thor, at least if there's a teammate around, whereas the matchup for a Willish into the Izanami is very, very good. Cheeto can't just jump away willy-nilly because every time he does so, he has to worry about getting pulled back in by Garrett. Then you're talking, am I willing to pre-beads in order to jump away here so that I don't get that caught out and I can actually get to safety? It's a much more dangerous dual lane situation for the Order of the Blight than it would be for LWUB. So you can anticipate likely that attention is going to be lent over here to this left-hand side as we see Blue kind of hanging around already, looking for maybe some of this neutral farm. Should be able to get the shield buff here, but like to see them pressure this a little bit harder for LWUB.
Yeah, you can't let the Thor roam free. That's the big thing. And I'm going to be watching Garrett this entire time just because everything that you've said really paints a clear picture that while there's plenty of win conditions in any given game, Garrett is certainly a massive one in how this Awelish will be played. And you just simply need it to come online. It's not, it really isn't that complicated of a fact. You just have to have the Awelish play out in an effective manner.
Yep.
Now, 6 minutes in, it's only 1-0, but the gold lead is a bit more striking in comparison. Already at 1,000, which isn't massive, but still interesting because it's felt like the Thor has had more jungle control, but the rest of LWUB has just really been clean with the farming. I mean, look at the lead in solo. 9-6 right now?
Yeah. That's probably where almost all of your lead is going to be. If we could actually take a look at net worth, I would suspect that Framdir is quite a bit behind this Raven right now, and you can see he's a good 1,000 gold down as you see a Link in here.
Faramdir gets pulled, does have the Lawbringer up, and gets away under the tower safely. Massive for Faramdir. We talked about it. Without that TP, even something as nice as getting away from a gank like that really isn't that big of a victory because you can't just simply back and come back and heal. You've got to play around the lack of the TP, and it's something that's going to rear its ugly head time and time again. Cheeto and Storming Shadows throwing blows. I talked about it. They're 1-2. They want the blood. The Whirlpool comes out, but Cheeto gets a dash out. Gonna hide behind the Bastion, which will make Storming Shadows back up. Matter of fact, the Spectral hit, and look at the Thor who's on the way and in the sky, and Storming Shadows is the victim on the slam. With the beads, perfect timing perhaps, but no. Blue finds the kill on the Storming Shadows.
Rotation is coming in here from LWUB, though. Beads will be forced out from that Thor. Has to respect the fact that Garrett and the rest of the crew could have been just around the corner. No vision to allow him to know that he was actually fairly safe there. Could be a re-engage here, actually, from Order of the Blight, but at the end of the day, should just be all she wrote. And Cheeto gets the better end of that one, man. He took a losing trade, but he took a losing trade when his jungler was closer than the enemy jungler. And sometimes that's all you need to do in these side lanes is lose gracefully enough that you can force the enemy to play aggressively. Storming Shadows used just about everything in the kit to try to find that solo kill onto Cheeto. It was sort of working. I mean, he got him very low. He didn't lose any HP in that trade, really, but just used all of his resources. That Whirlpool form is so critical to keep him safe from that Thor dunk. And as soon as that's down, doesn't even matter that blue is on a ward. Doesn't even matter that they know exactly when he's going to be landing. There's nothing you can do to immune the damage coming out from Thor at this stage of the game. Maybe if you had an Aegis online, maybe if we're talking 5 minutes from now. But at least level 8, Storming Shadows has no opportunity to live through that. So well played from Cheeto to draw out the additional aggression from Storming Shadows.
Oh, okay. Cheeto getting aggressive with the ultimate now. Storming Shadows responds. The Maw hungers. The Maw finds Cheeto, but Storming's falling low. He's joking so far. The Whirlpool comes out underneath Cheeto, but has to be used as an escape because once again, nobody on Order of the Blight respects the 1v1, and Terra's here, and Terra ends the 1v1. Cheeto gets the credit.
All right, I have to drop the propaganda because the ADC for my draft league team is a Charybdis one trick, and he's constantly telling me that the Maw Hungers, the Charybdis ult, is the biggest bait in all of Smite. It's a very slow ability. It does okay damage, but doesn't really shift the team fight in your favor. And he's constantly saying, you know, if you just use beads on the ult and continue to auto-attack the Charybdis, it's still a positive trade for you, even if you take the ult damage. And we saw it there in the left lane. We might see more action in the right lane here.
Framdir is just a victim at this point. Zoriat's going to follow, and the overhead kick will confirm it. Another death for the tier, and Zoriat decided to be polite and hold the door for Garrett on the way out.
And we talked about this Raven, man. It's a very good pick, and by God, is it a very good pick from ahead. And this 2-level lead, almost 3 levels here for Zoriat over Framdir, is going to begin to be a problem. And by the way, what an incredible sentry ward there from Asta the Pasta. He gets a net plus 30 on that sentry ward. Not something you get to see very often. But anyway, back to Zoriat. This 2.5 to 3 level lead for this Raven is going to be an issue sooner rather than later. Right now, when he's been confined to the solo lane for the most part, just beating down on Framdir, it feels bad if you're the tier, it feels bad if you're the Thor, knowing you can't pressure the right side of the jungle. But at least the other roles for the time being are feeling okay with the fact that Zoriat hasn't rotated out yet. As soon as he makes some kind of macro rotation, be that the Stygian Beacon, which is due to spawn in about a minute now, or this Gold Fury, which has been up for a good while, could be a good option either way for him to get involved.
Flicker has already been used. The beads was used on the freeze for Safa, just trying to escape at this point, but Garrett is hot in the chase, taking a lot of poke in the process. Asta the Pasta will eventually clean up the Merlin, but they spent a lot of time doing it, and Garrett took a lot of poke. So LWUB gonna have to retreat on back, take their time, and play it easy. That could have gone bad. We did see the blue was starting to rotate, but a lot expended, but you did get the kill, so not too much of a no harm, no foul type thing.
Oh, what a demon. He's going for the speed buff here. Garrett does know, or at least seems to have an idea. I think that he secures the speed buff, but now blue should be in danger here. Doesn't look like Garrett wants it, at least not yet. But hang on, Raven is rotating over.
And blue is going to be forced into the Anvil of Dawn and has to just get out of dodge. Not exactly the way that the Thor anticipated the jungle invade going, but got,
Probably
you know,
not.
a couple small minions and didn't die. So ultimately, it neutrals out.
It could have been worse, and good freeze here onto Terra. That's some good damage. And look at this, Zoriat making the rotation already. The Stygian Beacon, something we haven't talked about yet, but a new thing in Smite, another macro objective you can fight over. Gives you gold, gives you XP. You can see that LWUB certainly seem to want that. This is a good window for them to rotate players over to this Gold Fury. Zoriat's already here. Could have tried to force a little bit further, will instead teleport to the right lane and pick up some of that farm that was going under tower. So they do get the macro win, but I would have liked to see them press the issue a little bit more. If you're already rotating your solo laner over and you're already in a winning position 3 levels up for Zoriat over Framdir, you want to swing that lead as early and often as possible. The longer you let Zoriat just sit in solo lane, the longer you let Framdir farm up, get those defensive items online, the less you're going to feel the impact of these rotations later on. If Zoriat walked straight from the beacon over to this Gold Fury, it could have been disastrous for the Order of the Blight. I think they're likely counting their lucky stars that LWUB aren't playing a little bit more aggressively there because they had a window, they just didn't choose to go through it.
I actually, as we see the shield buff being contested, it could go either way, but Order of the Blight has the advantage. But look behind them. Look at Blue. Look at the setup here. It could be nasty. They're going to lock away Asta the Pasta, who had the tiniest little spot to walk through. But it should just be a matter of time. Nice wall. That actually could be a big difference. Has the blink too.
Okay.
It's a great escape. I thought Asta was dead. I was already writing the in memoriam for Asta the Pasta, but there's the escape. It's beautiful. He's gone. He's safe. I'm an idiot. What can I say?
Hey man, chair one moment, you know, and we'll see an Anvil at Dawn here. Another chair one moment for you.
Right on the edge, and again the wall is great, but again an escape. This time the Terra does not want to let the same thing happen, but Home Sweet Home was enough for Apple Toast to get out of there. So Order of the Blight comes up unlucky again. Zoriat has made the rotation to the mid lane and has eyes on Blue. The root is good, the Onslaught and the Mystic Rush. Terra does fantastic at creating the space for Blue to escape, so both teams walk away with just a taste of death, but no actual numbers to back it up.
And Aegis expended there from Blue, so he does actually lose a critical tool to keep him alive, but granted, with the way the jungle is played right now, you have all the opportunity in the world to dictate when you're going in next, so you can anticipate that Blue, if he needs the Aegis, he won't be going in anytime soon. He's got another 130 on that. I'm keeping my eyes, man, on Zoriat on this Raven. He's made the rotation into the mid lane. We saw the beacon. We saw that fight there in mid. He gets the Aegis. That's fine. You need to get a little bit more out of this pick. He's already doing well. I'm giving him full credit for that. He's played the lane tremendously. He's 2-0. He's 2.5 levels up, almost 3 levels up on Framdir on this tier. But Pyromancer's up. You've got a middle tower you could be taking. You could be grouping up for a Gold Fury. They need to play their cards right in these next 5 minutes or so. Don't forget that this Awilish is okay right now. This is actually probably her strongest point around this 15-minute mark. But the longer you wait, the better that Thor is going to be, the worse the Awilish is going to get, and the less impactful this Robin's lead is going to be. He's finally taken down both Bastions. Tower's half HP. He's got a Pina Colada in one hand. Like, my man's got to get involved sooner rather than later.
I actually want to call back what I was trying to say before all the fights broke out. Something you said earlier. You said losing gracefully. And
yes,
to Framdir's credit, 2 levels behind, 2 deaths, it hasn't really felt like, I mean, Zoriat's a problem, but it hasn't felt like Framdir has added to the problem more so than definitely could have been the case. It could have been really bad.
Yeah, definitely could have. If he just runs it down, as is prone to happen, especially at these lower division levels where you get a little bit upset with something, you try to force an opportunity that isn't really there, trying to catch up, then you can run into trouble. But trouble has found you nonetheless over here as Stygian Beacon charging Gold Fury pulled by LWUB.
And we saw what LWUB put onto the Stygian Beacon last time. It was priority. This time it's a Gold Fury down to half. In order, the Blight's having a hard time finding their way there. The Terra will be first. It's at a quarter. Terra's in. It's going to be close, but LWUB get the Gold Fury, and Terra should drop with it. Storming Shadows has the credit for that one, and now LWUB forces the issue. Zoriat leads the way to the left while Garrett goes to the right, but there's 3 around Garrett, and somehow the Merlin gets away. Still on the left, Zoriat's chasing and will find Cheeto at the ends of the earth. Cheeto fingers Zoriat will walk back and rejoin the rest of the boys in blue who had a clean Gold Fury fight.
Poor Cheeto, man. There is no getting away from this level 16 Raven right now. And Cheeto's level 16 himself. He was probably feeling pretty good. He's got 3 full items online. That dominance should make you hit tanks pretty hard. But, Raven's a different beast at this stage of the game, especially now that he's got this Pridwin finished out. If he gets on top of you as an ADC, chances are you are likely dead. It is just over, as you say. Pridwin, the Stone of Binding, which he's likely going into, could be an Archdruid's Fury in that slot as well. The Manticore Spikes, the Glad Shield, all of these items fit the same bill. You want to be tanky with the base stats, and you want the passive on all of these items to give you additional damage. Glad Shield does it off of your protections. Pridwin does a flat amount based on your protections as well. Manticore's is based on your HP. All of it makes you tanky and also somehow makes you deal just enough damage to kill these backliners. We saw this the last time we had tank meta, where the thing that makes it feel so strong is they're not sacrificing tankiness for damage. They're getting both at the exact same time. And this Raven has ample amounts of both tankiness and damage to take that 1v1 even under the tower.
Thor going to be forced to use the ultimate there to get away, and LWUB knew it was up. They did not expend too much. The Beacon, another story. Order the Blight gets it for free. No contest from Apple Toast would have surely been obliterated. And I want to go back a little bit because you mentioned Cheeto's build. It's not something we haven't seen before. I think Barracuda actually ran it at Masters, but it's certainly an interesting take on the build. How do you feel about it?
Man, ADC builds are the ones I know the least about, so we might have to take a minute to let me think about that, as Pyromancer grabbed here by LWUB.
LWUB's creating the time for you. Pyro's going to get pulled. Asta the Pasta going to look for the secure, and LWUB get the Pyromancer. Framdir could be in trouble, but is trying to get away, is trying to die gracefully. Not the most graceful, but Asta Pasta will take it nonetheless. Zoriat will chase out Thor, and again, LWUB get an objective. They get it right from under the nose of Order of the Blight, and Blight just can't respond.
They can't. It really feels it, doesn't it? Because every time they've tried to look for something in response, all of these team fights that we've been seeing have all been going in the favor of LWUB pretty convincingly. It was a matter of whether or not LWUB was willing to fight, not whether or not Order of the Blight could fight back into it. I don't think we've seen a team fight so far where Order of the Blight have looked good on it. They've been a little bit behind on a bunch of these fights, especially the one at the Gold Fury. They snuck away the beacon, but that's not going to be enough.
Storming Shadows in a bit of trouble here, as Thor and Cheeto are both lurking, already brought down to half, but with the beads, the only thing forced there, that could have gone way worse. And now Garrett's over, blinks forward, looking for Cheeto, not fully commit. Looked like it for a second. It looked like the eyes were glowing red, looking for blood.
It does get the beads off of Cheeto, though. Uses them to jump away, as we talked about previously. So that is at least one cooldown expended for one cooldown. Blink on Garrett and beads off of Cheeto. That could be very important very quickly here, Anthony, because look at this. Primal Fury due to spawn in just a couple extra seconds. Zoriat has already backed and is willing to teleport back in. Think that this is going to be a fight sooner rather than later, and Cheeto missing that critical beads cooldown could make him a target here as LWUB walk up and try to get some positioning. I think that this is going to be a critical moment in this fight, in this game, Anthony, because if Order of the Blight can't put their foot down here, they might risk getting run over.
They've got to stand strong. LWUB going to do their best to make them look a bit weak at this Primal Fury. Asta the Pasta gets a nice wall, but not able to find the freeze on the Cheeto, so they step back once again. Important to note what you said, Storming Shadow still has that ultimate, so it does have some CC immunity. Primal Fury down to half health, and Zoriat is playing defense, and Order of the Blight know what that means, but they're going to step forward regardless. Primal's getting pulled, it's getting dropped low. Who's going to get it? It's LWUB, and the health bars that follow are dropping quick because everybody's in a line. So far, no one's got the pure advantage, but Safa's dealing with Zoriat, which has been a death sentence, and Framdir gets pulled back to Garrett. Zoriat will find Safa. Zoriat will take on the world, finds a double, and is still going. Garrett found Framdir in the back, and Zoriat, no matter how low he might drop, will not be afraid. Finally, they are forced to back up as Cheeto was looking to step forward. Zoriat getting a bit too low for comfort. But LWUB, another fight that just feels like no contest.
I don't know, man. I saw some contest in there. We had a great Anvil of Dawn from Blue. Hits 2 to 3 members in the backline, including getting the beads, getting the Aegis off of Storming Shadows in that engagement. And also, the contest was pretty darn close as well. You saw the Ymir use the Shards of Ice, Home Sweet Home, Lawbringer, everybody dumped everything they had into the Gold Fury. And by the time all was said and done, all the quote-unquote confirm abilities were down. Gold Fury was still kicking, so that was a true and total coin flip on that one that LWUB end up coming out on the top of, and it was almost in favor of Order of the Blight. That was the best fight we've seen from them. They don't get any kills, but health bars certainly did get low for LWUB. I think that that was the best fight we've seen pretty much all game from them. And it's a shame that it doesn't end up panning out in their favor, because 5,000 gold, which we saw before that Primal Fury, is a lead that you can fight back into. That's about 1,000 on each player. That's barely a tier 1 item. Now we're talking almost twice that much, and it's likely spread pretty what am I looking for? Pretty liberally, there we go, over Zoriat, the solo laner, because he's now backing, has that level 20 starter item finished off here alongside that Archdruid's Fury. Between Bluestone Brooch and Archdruid's Fury, this guy is going to be, he's going to be swinging. That much is for sure. So this is going to be a much more difficult fight for Order of the Blight here around this Pyromancer, and could be a Fire Giant to follow if they're not careful.
As you said, the gold lead is ballooned, currently 9-2 as we get close to 24 minutes. The last fight was interesting because, like you said, it did get close, but in the middle it stalled out. We'll see if history repeats itself again. They're going to take the same approach, and this time it's going to work! They steal the Pyromancer. Framdir going to look to escape, but dealing with a lot in the process. Notable this time, though, Zoriat did not kill the entire backline. Order of the Blight simply walked away.
Yeah, and the entire backline did not kill Zoriat either. I don't know if you saw that Merlin use his entire kit on Zoriat and only take the shield off of the Raven. Didn't even touch the health bar yet. So that's certainly not a great sign if you're an Order of the Blight fan, as LWUB back up here and start contesting this Fire Giant. They got 2 in left, man. This is not a good look for them.
It's not. Framdir has shown to be the aggressive one so far. The Fire Giant's at 5k health, and they're set up to definitely contest. Zoriat's playing defense in the back, but he couldn't stop Framdir, who gets in the pit, but LWUB still secures it. They're going to take a tier for their troubles. Zoriat just playing too good of defense to let the backline in. It was all up to Framdir, and while the steal potential was there, Framdir cannot 1v5. It's just simply not possible right now.
I do like the effort, though. I think that we need to see a lot more teams start doing that, where you're already behind, you're down 8-9k gold at that point, you're already likely to lose the Fire Giant regardless, and then lose a lot more off the back end of it. I think that I like my chances of maybe stealing Fire and stalling out the game more than I like my chances of trying to defend on the Fire Giant completely. So I don't hate the steal attempt, but this, whatever they're doing over here, is not so good.
Cheeto almost got caught out in a big way, was forced to drop the beads as well. LWUB gonna clean up the tier 2 tower. Now, last week I cast LWUB, and I will share with you the fact that LWUB had a very similar feeling set to this game, in that they were winning, they were feeling dominant, but objectives, and then later on, the big problem, the base sieges felt very scary every single time. They ended up winning, but every siege, it felt like there was 1 or 2 things that just went drastically wrong, where they probably could have won 15 minutes earlier than they did. Against a top team like Order of the Blight, to me, that's Order of the Blight's big opening.
It could be, because the Order of the Blight siege defense is actually really, really good. Merlin is among the best for siege defense because he has that very good long-range wave clear that doesn't prevent him from dealing damage as well, because he can swap into that second stance and then still have some poke for the front line, prevent them from diving him just so freely. I think that Order of the Blight actually are in a pretty okay spot here, at least as okay as you can be against a team that's 11,000 gold in the lead with a Fire Giant that is a full health Titan marching down the right side of your map. They've got blue split pushing the mid lane. Izanami gets a back off, so Cheeto's not going to be there just yet, but honestly, if they can successfully defend this Phoenix and then still get this tower down in mid, it's a great look for them, but they got to have all members to do it.
So we're going to go ahead and back because Order of the Blight is feeling the pressure. The tier 2 tower will fall. They have their Titan. It's healthy. We didn't even talk about the Titans because we're so used to it at this point, but what was interesting is LWUB has theirs perfectly ready to go, and they're going to march it in. They're already at the Phoenix. They've got to go in behind it. They have Home Sweet Home ready to go. Zoriat's in the back line already. We've seen that a time or two. Garrett dealing with Framdir, and Zoriat is just deleting Cheeto off the map. Blue trying to do the same thing to the back line, but was not quite as tanky. And look at Zoriat just in the throne room. It's ridiculous. finally gets some CC'd. It doesn't even matter. Layman gonna die to Garrett. And now LWUB is gonna take their Titan to the Chaos Titan. In order to Blight may be in some massive trouble here. They've got to reset and try to defend, but I don't know if they can quite do it. Titan's already down to half health, and LWUB is still standing strong. Framdir did get Storming out of the fight for now, had to use the Whirlpool, but Apple Toast found Blue, and the Titan is gonna drop. LWUB managed to pull it out. 13-2, 28 minutes, game 1 goes the way of LWUB.
Order the Blight made it dramatic at the end there. A lot of low health bars for LWUB, but aggro juggled perfectly for them in that throne room. Still undying were 4 members for LWUB at the end of that game. Order the Blight 13-2, almost completely shut out were it not for 2 of those deaths onto Storming Shadows. And they've got some issues. They've certainly got a couple of things that they need to address going into this next picks and bans phase. And honestly, Anthony, I'm gonna keep it a stack with you. I'll keep it a $1.50, as the kids say. They've got to deal with this Robin. I think that if you go first pick, if you take it for yourself, if you go second pick, you got to ban it away. Clearly, Zoriat is way too comfortable on this character, and Framdir does not have the matchup experience against the Robin. You got to take it away. You got to ban it away. 100%. Whatever the case may be, you can't let them get that strong solo presence a second time around.
If Zoriat gets that Robin back, I might be forced to speak in tongues. I will not be able to process the type of dominance that could come through. And while certainly you could look across the rest of LWUB, and Garrett did have a strong performance, 17k damage. Appletoast not far behind that. It's just, how do you ignore what Zoriat was able to do? We saw Zoriat standing next to the Titan in Order of the Blight's throne room, just throwing hands with Cheeto and Safa casually, just doing his thing, while Blue was doing everything possible to stop LWUB, but it just wasn't there. I mean, I agree with you. The Robin has to go, but aside from that, what else can Order of the Blight do? We know they're a good team. They've gotten to this point, and their record is fantastic. But so what else is there that they can look to change up?
I think at least in the team fight stage, the most critical change that they could make is better coordination between Blue and Framdir. We saw in that last siege defense around the right side Phoenix when they had the Titan coming in. I know it's chaotic. It's difficult to manage all of the information that's coming at you. You got the Baba Yaga ult going off. You've got the Robin diving your backline, but you need to keep a calm head if you're the jungle and the solo, because your job is still to dive. You have to get that penetration off, and you have to do it together. Framdir went in before Blue even landed from the Anvil of Dawn, which means that by the time that Blue came down, there was no frontline presence in the backline with him. So he immediately has to dunk down, use beads, hammer out, and then look to try to re-engage in the throne room. If you have Framdir Lawbringer in at the same time as that Anvil of Dawn drops, you've got 2 full health enemies to deal with if you're the LWUB backline. That could have been a much more scary situation, because Blue got great damage off, and he hit 2 people with the Anvil of Dawn, forced relics off of both of them, but because he was alone at that point, because Framdir already had to disengage, he just didn't have the damage required to do it all by himself. I'd like to see more coordination, communication, whatever it has to be. I want Framdir, I want Blue working together in these team fights.
All right, that's the 3 notes. Write them down, put them on your forehead, put them on a sticky note. Better coordination, ban the Robin or pick it up, and get Framdir comfortable. Those are the big things to look for. We got game 2 around the corner. We'll be right back on GSL.
So cliche, I see the sparks you throw my way. I know your name is written on everyone's mind. Your whole show is captivating me, but don't think that I can see right through that disguise. But when you got close to me, you had me falling so hard, baby, yeah, now I get it. You got heads turning, and you don't even try. Well, would you look at that? My glass is empty, How about I get another drink, baby, Okay, I get it. You got fire burning, right there in your eyes. So when you got took a second chance, trusted you again. I feel shattered. Broken strings, cause you play me like a violin. Shame on me for all your 7 deadly sins. Had it all, but you craved attention. Drowning in your own reflection. Put me down just to see me get back up again. 6 feet under and you're ready to give all the pain. If I was your new addition, you make me part of your equation. Shattered from the past, wish you were my last. Shatter me to pieces like broken glass. Frozen looking at pictures that we took back in the summer. I thought that I would remember how it used to feel, but this isn't real. Now we're over. Take it all, there's nothing left here anyway. We used to talk, but now we don't know what to
Hello and welcome back to GSL. I'm still Anthony with Kaizo and Rosie, and game 1 was kind of shocking to a certain extent. It was certainly behind the the damage and the power of Zoriat, Kaizo, but the big thing to take away is a simple and clean. LWUB took game 1 in a heated matchup.
I will end this
They did,
fight.
and they looked very good doing it. They didn't look shaky at any point. They had one team fight around the Gold Fury where it felt like a bit of a coin flip, but honestly, at the stage of the game we were at, 5,000 gold in the lead at around that point in the game. Even if they lost that Gold Fury, was still just going to be a force to equalize as opposed to blundering the lead and giving it away to Order of the Blight. So very commanding
Are you
performance from
ready,
LWUB,
Foley?
honestly, as you said, mostly on the back of Zoriat and the pressure that he was capable of creating from the solo lane, especially off of those rotations. But Order of the Blight lost gracefully, as we said in game 1 at a couple
Certainly.
of different times. They didn't throw away the lead. It wasn't a snowball by any stretch of the imagination. They made LWUB fight for every little bit that they got. And they did come out on top. LWUB certainly won all of those fights, but it wasn't like Order of the Blight rolled over and just gave it to him.
I want to give you more lore. I gave you that tidbit of lore in game 1.
Lore drop, do it.
Hachimon
coming
for
for
Storming
you, laddie.
Shadows
Okay.
and Cupid for Cheeto
Okay.
are the two characters, at least to my limited knowledge of the GSL, that these two ADCs are known for. Quite literally, Cupid was the picture on that team of the week I talked about. And last week I mentioned I cast LWUB. I watched Storming Shadows 1v2 an Ishtar Bacchus with like 100 health and walk away with
Stoke the
almost
fires.
2 kills, but certainly a solo through it after dashing into both of them. I saw some crazy stuff. So plain and simple, this ADC matchup is going to be one to watch. We saw that they weren't afraid to take the 1v1s last game for sure.
Yeah, and I think that Hachiman will absolutely get the better of that matchup. Cupid is a lane bully, but only like a situational lane bully, I guess is the best way to put it, where he has matchups, he has situations where he looks very good, where he feels very oppressive. If you're playing, I don't know, something that can't get out of the fields of love very reliably, if you don't have any crowd control immunity inherent in the kit, it can feel very
Watch your
difficult to
head.
deal with this character because he just builds cooldown, ults you, forces your relics, and then it's a very difficult laning phase to deal with. But Hachiman has everything you want in an ADC right now. He is the ADC of ADCs right now. He's got very good long-range poke. He's got good all-in with the stun from the dash and then the banner drop on top of it. He's got crowd control immunity and good gap close or gap creation with that mounted archery ultimate. It's a very difficult matchup for Cupid to feel very comfortable in. Cupid wants to play against something that has to respect his ultimate ability, and Hachi does not fall into that category. So I think that Storming Shadows is certainly got the upper hand here, but that's not to say that
Look
Cheeto
out
can't make
below!
something out of nothing. As you said, the Cupid was there for a reason.
Ratatasker are going to get locked in as well, so you can control as much of the jungle as you want, as much as Garrett's God Pool. And apparently there's still something after Order of the Blight picked up the Awilish Opwash, still being hovered, but finally
Who
being
will
switched.
rise above the
The whole
rest?
time you were talking, I was listening intently. Don't get me wrong. I
Of
was,
course, of
my
course.
eyes were my eyelashes were batting. But I was
I was
staring
not
at the
glazing over at
Opwash
all.
and I was just begging, but unfortunately not going to get locked in. We go the Discordia route instead.
Now let me pitch you a question, Anthony. Why did you want the Opwash here? Is it for the
My
Achilles
blood
healing,
runs
or do you
cold.
just want to watch the world burn?
I want to watch the world burn. They're two top teams. It's a game two. If there is any time to bring out an Opwash, that's just the time to me.
All right, I'll trust you with it. And I will add, as a bit of a footnote, I recently lost to an Opwash jungle that built full tank and went 13-1 in my ranked games. So I'm not saying it's not on the table. It's certainly, I don't understand it, but apparently it works if you do it correctly.
Tell
So
me they had
I'm
Blink too.
they absolutely had Blink. They had
Let's
Blink
go!
Aegis because we had no crowd control. It was horrible. I hated every moment
Ooh,
of it.
Blink in, pop the Aegis after empty the crypts? That's nasty.
It
Hang
was
on.
it was destroying my mental. Like he just healed to full every single fight just by eating the bodies with the Bumba's hammer. I still have nightmares about it. I didn't get any sleep at all last night because of that. But point being, we don't have the Upwash here. We have the Discordia, which is a very volatile matchup into the Awilish because they are kind of two characters that beat each other up. Discordia has a jump as her main safety tool, which Awilish is very good at pulling and preventing you from really getting a whole lot of damage off. But if Discordia gets an Awilish at distance, that golden apple of discord crippling her, preventing her from jumping off of Suku, preventing her from using the feather step is very difficult to deal with. But again, the other way, you can feather step over the apple. If you get to her, it can actually get the penetration onto her and actually stick to her. So there's a lot going on in that matchup that can make it a very difficult one to navigate for either side. So it's a pretty exciting one to get to watch here.
Looking at both teams, I mean, for Order of the Blight, this if you remove the Achilles, this looks like a season 3 composition. On paper, let's
Yeah.
make it cut and clean. You had 3 goals: better coordination, remove the Robin, check. Framdir on comfort, we'll have to see. Who's got the better draft?
Better draft. It's so hard to root against Hachiman because he's been so dominant in the meta. There's not a whole lot of ADCs I think really measure up to him right now. I would argue that maybe you've got your Marty Chorus, which is banned away. Rom, I think, is in that conversation. I don't typically attribute Cupid to being in that same conversation as well. I think Cupid has his place, don't get me wrong, but it's usually as a utility pick. You want to prevent some kind of movement ability. You're playing against a Susano, you're playing against an Ardio, something that really gets shut down by that Fields of Love ultimate. And I just don't see the value that you're going to get out of the Cupid in this game. You can prevent Ratatosker from dashing, Discordia from jumping. There are movement abilities on the LW draft, but they're not the critical ones that I typically attribute with being do or die. I need to get this
Right.
off or else the team fight is over. So it's really going to be on Cheeto to prove that this is a pick that obviously he's comfortable with. He likes this pick, but is it one that he can make work in a situation where the cards are stacked against him? I think it's pretty safe to say that this is not a ideal matchup for the Cupid, not only in the lane matchup, but also just going against that team. So he's going to have to prove that he can pilot this god very effectively, that he knows the ins and outs of this one better than the LW draft seemed to have it available.
For sure. As we were looking at the draft, I'm trying to just think of these questions to pose at you because this matchup is so fascinating on paper. Because we talked about it in Picks and Bans of Game 1, where every lane is interesting to look at and has something going on. So let's touch on the supports. Asta the Pasta versus Leeman. Sobek and Ymir are not exactly, I'm not saying they're bad at all, but they are certainly not two supports that we see very commonly get picked up. We talked about the season 3, right? This is an old matchup.
Yep.
What do you expect to see from them?
I think it's criminal that Ymir isn't picked up more. Granted, the supports right now do a whole lot of different things. Like the emojis of the world, your Terra, stuff like that is very, very good at some very specific things that people typically think are very good in the meta right now. But people always forget how strong that wall is from Ymir, shutting down an avenue for players to walk through the jungle, making them have to take different pathing, especially considering only one character on Order of the Blight capable of maneuvering around that wall. You're forcing the enemy support to get a Phantom Shell in that case, which excuse me, anytime you can deny them the choice of a relic and force them into something, I typically think that's very strong. And then the Frostbite passive is just always slept on. That is percent damage reduction. People pick up horrific emblem for that right now and are willing to invest an entire relic into getting what Ymir is capable of by pressing any one of three different buttons in his kit. This Ymir god is criminally underpicked up right now. I think that he is a great toolbox character where you don't want to pick him every game, but there are certainly situations where I would want to have a Ymir over any other support in the game. And honestly, Anthony, with the way that the Order of the Blight are stacked up here, incapable of maneuvering around the wall, auto attack center jungler, I think this is a sick Ymir pickup.
Asta the pasta, you are officially on the hot seat with the noodles and all. LWUB versus Order of the Blight, another juggernaut matchup. We're already in lane, ready for war. Let's do it for sure. Let's start simple. This laning phase has to go better for Framdir, and it looks like it is actually. Zoriat got very poked out in the initial wave.
Did lose a bit of HP here, and honestly, it's a little bit surprising. I think the Cucullin should be winning most of these level 2 trades just because that transformation timing is typically around that area where you get both of your abilities. But hang on, he's taking a whole lot of damage.
Got way too aggressive with the dash forward, took a lot of minion poke alongside it after the stun. But Zoriat, standing behind his own minions for safety. Framdir can't quite chase it, can't go crazy yet. But playing way too risky for my liking. You want to have that same effect you had last game, and dying early would not be the quickest way to do that.
Now, he's getting a little bit fast and loose over there, but he is probably favored to win this match. Apparently, not how he's playing it, though.
And the minions again are doing work for Framdir, but because of the minions of LWUB, Framdir could not chase it further, has to back up
Wow.
again. But this solo lane is going to be bloody. Normally, we talk about solo lanes kind of being on an
Nothing.
island. You can sort of throw it to the
Yeah.
side, not worry about it. But this is something to watch. And Blue
Especially.
has the same idea. Heading over, gonna look for Zoriat, who's in the way. Framdir low, keep that in mind. Jump over after the
Oh.
blink, and Blue could not find Zoriat. That's massive for the Cucullin. That could have been a massive shift. Now Garrett rotating over too. It just doesn't stop over here.
Oh my god, he doesn't know. Blue walked away. Fremdir has
Oh,
no
and
idea.
the blink from Garrett, the blast, the spin, but Framdir finds a double stun.
For
Can he
sure.
escape? No way! The bloody solo lane continues without any actual blood, still 0-0.
Oh my god, that was like a horror movie because Framdir that entire time is like, all right, my jungler just finished shield camp, now walking into my jungle. If there was anything in that jungle, we should know about it. But as soon as Blue
Jeez.
rounds the corner, Garrett immediately walks over. Had a good chance on that kill for the second time around there. Both junglers had a decent opportunity to sneak away that first blood. Neither one of them finding it, though, means that we get to, keep our teeth clenched a little bit longer as both of these solo laners sticking around, not willing to teleport back in just yet. They both have the teleport available, so could get a reset off here for a little bit more safety. And I would like to see either or honestly both of them do that because I don't know if my blood pressure can manage if they just step back up and try to fight again.
You are never gonna get any sleep tonight. You're gonna need a blankie.
I'm really not. I need like a blankie, like some warm milk, some cookies. I don't know what I need. Maybe some CBD, but whatever it's gonna be, it's gotta put me night night, man. I am gonna be up all night like this.
Somebody has to knock Kaizo out ASAP, or else it's gonna be bad. Asa the Pasta and Storming Shadows will secure the shield buff. Lee-Man did their best. Purple buff came all the way over for the fun, and now Cheeto's preoccupied. So LWUB gonna get aggressive
Good
on to
pluck.
Lee-Man. Nobody's rotating over, so right now it's just the battle of the duo lane, and both are gonna go their separate ways.
Oh, I also forgot the coolest thing about the Ymir and Sobek matchup is you can. Okay, it is a very difficult maneuver to pull off. You can get we won't have time.
Not gonna have time at all as Framdir's fighting for his life out here, Kaizo, and gonna die to the Bluestone proc. Zoriat gonna find the solo kill onto Framdir.
And finds it after what felt like forever. Neither one of them teleported back in, and that's what happens, man. I said they need to teleport back in to get that safety, and no safety either for the purple buff over here or to the Blight looking for the invade.
Asta the Pasta with the blink to try to help, and it works! Freezes the purple buff in place! The tech on Asta the Pasta is insane. I need a view into Asta's mind yesterday.
Okay, well, if we're talking about cool Ymir tech for him to be doing, he can. We're not gonna have time again, Anthony. Blink in here from Garrett.
And Cheeto is half health, but Garrett doesn't want to chase further. A wall from Asta the Pasta, continuing the tech despite Kaizo's point still not being said. Will we see the tech before the tech is talked about? That's the biggest question.
That is becoming a question because with the way that Asta the Pasta is playing this Ymir, it's entirely possible. I'll be quick, man. I really
Go,
will.
go, go,
here.
go, go.
So you can use the wall. You can get plucked by the Sobek. Use the wall in front of you, and then prevent yourself from being launched any further. There we go. That's the tech.
The comeback arc was real in a solo lane, and Framdir's got one. The Apple of Discord for the survival, and Apple Toast lives under the tower? I think you should keep talking about the Ymir tech, because every time you talk about it, things go crazy, and Garrett's not done with the crazy. Looking for Safa, and goodbye, Vulcan.
Wow.
And Framdir's got a kill on Zoriat!
He did. He got the solo over there back in his favor now that he's got that golden blade online. And the kill in mid was surprising going both ways, honestly, because Blue, a little overzealous, we'll say, to put it politely, to be diving the tower there. And then across the way, Garrett, the last possible frame of that auto attack before he got knocked up by that meatball was enough to secure the kill onto Safa. It's left, right, and center, man. We are getting action everywhere, which is so much different than we saw in game number 1. It was fairly quiet for most of the game. We had those 2 solo kills over here in the solo lane, but past that point, if you recall, no jungler interaction pretty much anywhere until we saw that kill in the dual lane onto Storming Shadows. It's a very different pace to this game.
The junglers are rotating over, but they're both going to back away. I think they scared each other. Maybe some blanky use for the junglers. Now they turn back. They're at the same pace. They're both going to look for it. We're going to have a 2v2 in the solo lane. Garrett gets the better of Framdir so far. Zoriat going to help secure it. Bluestone ticking. Zoriat kills Framdir. Garrett almost dropped by Blue. Through the Cosmos for the escape, and it's just in time. And now Blue is the one in danger on the landing.
Nice.
Will he get dropped? He feather stepped it, but that couldn't save him from being buried 6 feet deep from the Cosmos.
But that does tell you one thing about Blue. He is very attentive with his timing on these feather steps. That's the sign between a good Awilish player and a great Awilish player, is can you use your aggressive tools defensively?
A question that needs to be answered, and this game is feeling very American, Kaizo. I think it's because we're here. They're just fighting non-stop. Isn't this the land of the calm and the smart?
That's what they tell us, man. That is the narrative that they are preaching, but I'm not so sold on it, man. We've got 6 kills in 8 minutes, and it has been anything but calm here in game number 2. And it's all in favor of LWUB once again. Order the Blight falling a little bit behind in some of the same places that we saw in game number 1. Most crucially, perhaps, in this solo lane, Zoriat not on the critical overpowered Raven pick anymore, but certainly has some value on this one as well.
The value for Safa will come in the form of Appletoast, who's now gone. Asta the Pasta, tanky enough to be fine despite the 3 standing there, so just 1 additional pick for Order the Blight. Now 5-2 as we get ever closer to 9 minutes.
Oh my god, Anthony.
Go ahead, hit me.
I'm sorry. I'm so frazzled right now. I forgot to talk about my favorite tech possibly in all of Smite to play.
Oh no, there's a
as
pentakill coming.
Okay.
See,
well,
there's a kill!
Solo kill coming. I should have known better.
You can't talk about the tech!
Well, hang on. We might not be done either because I'm going to go even deeper into this one and see if we can get Garrett to go for a solo kill. If you play Sobek and a Willish on the same team, Anthony, a lot of people will think, oh, you can get the Sobek pluck into the Willish ult. No. That's not the tech. Use Sobek pluck in, miss it entirely, and then you use the tail whip. That counts as a knockup, and you can a Willish ult off of that. It is a 0 skill combo that kills tanks like no other. And as a controller player like myself, we love 0 skill combos that give you incredible amounts of payoff. All Lehman has to do is get near an enemy, and he can set up easily for a kill onto a frontliner or anybody that doesn't have beads. I'm so excited to see if they discover any of this tech, man. It's such an interesting matchup. You've got so many different gods that abuse each other in so many different ways. I love this kind of stuff. This is what I live for.
There's 2 steps up to your front door, and you're trying to combat jump through the window, and I am here for it, guys. I support you. Oh, 10 minutes on the clock. 5-3. LWUB, Order of the Blight, both in first place, both fighting for a lot that matters, to be sure. And the bloody lane has been solo, which is shocking. Dual lane's been forgotten about, and it's all we talked about in picks and bans.
Yep. And honestly, for all the blood we've seen over here, and for the fact that the solo laners are 4,000 damage ahead of anyone else, they're not just sitting passively in that lane, man. They want these solo kills. And despite that fact, if we can tab back over to net worth, please, Rosie, these guys are neck and neck. They're both 2-2, 100 gold at best, separating the two of them. A level lead, a half level lead, wave to wave in favor of actually Framdir instead of Zoriat over here. For all the action we've seen, for all of the explosive gameplay, hasn't gotten the lead just yet.
Safa gonna drop for nothing, basically. Garrett just got the better of him in that scenario. Killing spree now for the Ratatasker, and with the beacon on the horizon, LWUB, who we saw put a huge emphasis on it last game, looks to be continuing the same mindset, certainly. And I'm not sure if Order of the Blight has really gotten the memo on it quite yet.
Didn't look like it in game 1. I think that the only time they got a beacon for themselves was when Blue lured the entirety of the LWUB composition into the left side jungle when that was spawning, so they kind of just got it for free as sort of a congratulations, your jungler's alive, here's a beacon sort of play. But I would like to see them at least try to contest here, because they, at this stage of the game, were quite a bit further behind. We're talking 3, 4, 5,000 gold last game. This time around, it's only 1,000 gold. That's absolutely a lead you can fight back into. You don't even feel that if you're fighting into it right now. If you let it grow any further, then maybe, but at least for the time being, this is basically an even game. And that's why we see Framdir rotating over here.
An interaction certainly happened in the mid lane, and Appletoast got the better of the RNG there, but Order of the Blight gonna get the beacon, it appears. The Discord apple flies. Cosmos also up, so maybe not. Give yourself an out. Garrett goes in, and Order of the Blight still standing around the Stygian beacon, but both teams are ready to fight for it. We've got the ADCs rotating, get ready for a bloodbath. Cupid drops the Fields of Love to keep Zoriat storming out of there. It's enough time for Framdir to drop Apple Toast. And execute will find it. No, Framdir goes wide right and couldn't find the fatal strike. Now Framdir goes back in and runs into multiple members of LWUB, and Zoriat's doing the same things in the back, and he finds it. Safa does get Garrett. Look at the health bars of the Order of the Blight, and nobody's gotten the beacon. Are we sure this is European? This is as American gets. They're fighting for blood, but there's no winners.
Zoriat wanted it, even to his last breath. He successfully zoned out 3, if not 4 players there for the better part of 30 to 45 seconds in that engagement. But at the end of the day, it is Order of the Blight getting their first contested macro objective of the game. They had the steal away in game number 1 of, I believe it was a Pyromancer. But this is the first time we've seen them stake their claim on one of these objectives and get it for themselves off of their own work, as opposed to trying to steal it away from the hands of LWUB. And it honestly is just about evened out this game. That engagement fantastic for the Order of the Blight to not only prevent LWUB from farming, because all 10 players on the scenery for that engagement, but they also got the only gold lead out of it. I mean, there was no gold collected at all from LWUB during that, whereas Order of the Blight, while it was a small amount of gold, I think it's only about 50 to 100 per player, something like that. It is still something for their troubles. And I like the fact that they're willing to fight. They're at least capable of fighting right now. But I think that I need to see more out of Blue. This is 2 games in a row where we've seen it a Willish at around the 15-minute mark. This is usually when you attribute a Willish to having their strongest state of the game. And I feel like Blue hasn't been very involved. Garrett wasn't either at this stage, and I think it's a little unusual. I want to see more out of the Order of the Blight jungler, especially considering Framdir, he's bouncing back, man. Like, he had a rough game
100%.
number 1. He is looking incredible here in game number 2.
The only thing we've seen that was rough was that the Fatal Strike went a little bit wide. Otherwise, like you said, it's been a complete difference. Order of the Blight showing massive face by the Gold Fury, and so far, just Storming Shadows is there. But the vision they have will tell them that more are on the way, and Order of the Blight going to set up and prepare. Just a matter of who's going to make the first move. Apple Toast steps a bit far, and the pluck is no good, but Lehman not deep enough to get picked up.
No wall available for Asta the Pasta. Kind of some obscure geometry there getting in his way. That little wall in front of him prevented him from landing that wall and potentially getting some good damage off onto the Sobek. So instead it'll just be the shield buff, but actually they want Hachiman hang on left lane.
Storming Shadows stepped up to shield buff, and Order of the Blight saw an opportunity but didn't find it. Now the wall rings true in Lehman, but it's just the 2 of them, so they can make it if they try. LWUB and Order of the Blight are both just kind of tiptoeing around each other, and nobody has made a significant move. Maybe one towards mid.
Apple Toast.
Blue is looking for Apple Toast. This is the fight you talked about in picks and bans. They don't go for it, but Garrett finds Blue and gets pulled in after the knockup from the meatball.
Oh my God,
Another
he's
step,
insane!
and he's dead. But the Apple of Discord hits in the back, and Blue dies to Apple Toast. These mid lanes both just pulled through crazy.
Insane from both mid laners and both junglers to get the fact that that goes 1 for 1 feels so underwhelming, because I feel like we just watched 3 fights worth of niche interactions to talk about, and we don't get to talk about any of it because Storming Shadows is taking the 1v1.
Early Aegis mounted archery follows. Cheeto down to half. Storming Shadows in the 1v2, but look around the back. Saf is on the way. So Storming Shadows is just buying time. Will die to the heart bomb and the basic right after. So again, no 1v1. Earlier I was thinking that the ADCs were just being so calm. We saw the big rotation come out. I still expect them to go crazy late, but this early game, just not what we expected. Mid-game, a little more action so far. Gold Fury now getting pulled at 1650, and I don't know if Apple Toast has the perfect setup for this. Doesn't have the Apple of Discord, but the Earthshaker's early, and LWUB get the Gold Fury, and the Sobek hits the Grayscale. Fatal Strike gonna find a home, and Apple Toast and Framdir gets 1 in return. Up in the sky is Garrett, but I think it's just for the escape. LWUB will not be stopped. They just, every time we start to feel like Order of the Blight has really worked their way back in, and they're throwing equal hands, they make a misstep, and LWUB capitalizes.
I'll say it full stop, man. That was a misplay from Safa. That was the correct call for them to go for that Gold Fury there. They had no ultimate available for Garrett when they pulled that one. They had the vision control. They had the presence around the Gold Fury. They had at least a good couple thousand damage on it before anybody showed up. And with Earthshaker on the map and available, that is the best secure for either one of these teams. I think that if the Earthshaker is on time and we see it in tune with the meatball and the backfire at the same time, that should be the Order of the Blight's Gold Fury 80 to 90% of the time. But the Earthshaker was just wildly early. I don't know if it was a misclick. I don't know if they anticipated some other source of damage to come in a little bit sooner, but Safa just doesn't hit the mark there, and LWUB find a spot back into this game once again. And it really seems like all of these objectives are just kind of going their way all set long.
And the theme continues. The gold lead barely moving. A light teeter-totter. Garrett trying to change that. Blink forward, but the dash misses on the Cheeto, who gets to the safety of his tower. 9-8 as we creep on 19 minutes. And I could not tell you, no matter the circumstance, whose game this is. But LWUB going to look to keep capitalizing if Order of the Blight keeps misstepping. But the question is, will they? Asa the Pasta stepping up really aggressive, buying time for Garrett, who spin to wins, looking for Safa, is forced into the air. The Earthshaker off the mark again. He lands down. Could he find it? Phantom Shell used. Now he's in trouble. Vladimir turns it around in blue. Gets Apple Toast. Zoriat looking for the backline. We've seen that a time or two, but this time it's not as easy to get to. The puck back into the knockup, dashes forward, and now everyone turns on Zoriat. The three-man freeze. Can he get him away? Zoriat still in trouble. Will not escape. Blue finds it. Order of the Blight with their cleanest fight we've seen in a very, very long time.
By far the cleanest fight we've seen, and it comes at the expense of additionally a Stygian Beacon. They'll get a tier 1 tower in mid, and they have their pick of either a guaranteed Pyromancer or a potential Fire Giant here. They'll take the Pyromancer instead, and honestly, with the way that the LWUB positioning is coming out, I think that they could still grab this fire. Obviously, we have more vision on the map than they do. We can see where all of the blue side team is at and know that they're not ready to respond. Order of the Blight don't get the same luxury. But what an incredible fight from Order of the Blight there in the mid lane. I thought for sure that one was going to be chalked when we saw Sapa's positioning. He walks in, gets the beads forced, gets the Aegis forced, gets the shell forced. All of those tools required to keep him alive and get him into the tower safely. I thought for sure that was just going to be the end of it, but unfortunately the wall wasn't enough to cut off the positioning. It was used very early on to prevent him from going into the jungle as opposed to toward his tower where he was safer. And then the overcommitment from Zoriat kind of baited the rest of LWUB forward. Safa living there means they have so much damage left over, means that Blue Slitter gets to immediately walk to the backline of LWUB and start harassing Apple Toast and Asta the Pasta. It was a great fight from Order of the Blight, and now with these Titans walking down the left lane as well, this could be a critical changing point for Order of the Blight. Another fight win here could be a significant lead for them.
Order of the Blight has finally shifted the momentum. LWUB, can they do the same thing? The Titans have met, and it's a 4v5. Notably missing is Zoriat, and LWUB has to respect that, so they take the steps back, and they're going to have to concede the Titan fight. Tier 1 tower still standing and above half, so it could be a worse scenario. Zoriat, finally, lurking in the back, could look for that back line. Got the perfect spot, just has to commit to it.
Blink is available if he wants to go in here.
They're waiting too long. Storming Shadows now getting poked out, and Order of the Blight going to step up, but step back. The Chaos Titan may die in the process. They will get the Tier 1 tower, but they maybe lost their opportunity. Wall and the Pluck forced them around the side. LWUB in full retreat. The Titan will fall momentarily, so Order of the Blight maybe not as clean with it as they would have wanted, and maybe a missed opportunity, but you can't deny that this sets up Order of the Blight to continue the momentum push.
Yeah, I would have liked to see them play more aggressively, and they'll sit on the corner here knowing Oni Fury is up. LWUB want to walk in to try to get toward it, but look at all of the red vision on the map here for Order of the Blight. They know exactly where the backliners for LWUB are. They're going to hunt for a Pluck here onto the front line, try to pick somebody off to break this fight open. The LWUB are so careful. Keep your eyes on LeMan. See if you can get a Pluck, or they're just going to have to fall back to this Gold Fury. Looks like it'll be the latter, but I don't think LWUB are going to want to give this one up for free.
That was the most come here you ask we wabbit thing I've ever seen from a Sodak. It didn't quite work out. Storming Shadows stopped from backing. Oni Fury going to go for free to Order of the Blight. LWUB, it looked like they might contest for a while, but eventually they just decided to not bother. We're seeing them take a very passive approach to these last few minutes that just does not feel fitting to, one, the playstyle we've seen, and to two, what has worked for them.
I do think that it is indicative of the momentum of the map, though. I think LWUB felt that they could give up that Oni Fury and still be okay, whereas if they took that fight and lost it, then it was going to be catastrophic for them. And with all of the vision control that Order of the Blight had on all of the critical choke points that LWUB needed to walk through, I think it's probably for the better that they don't try to step up there. You said it yourself, LeMan was hunting very much so for literally anybody on LWUB. And if anybody gets picked out there, that could have been the fight and the Fury, and then maybe a Fire Giant off the back end of it. Instead, just giving up the Fury means that they can clear out the waves. They can still step up to this Pyromancer. They're a little bit behind here, but not exorbitantly so. They can certainly still fight back into this lead fairly comfortably. They do have that Oni wave in left, but it's unlikely to be able to even take that tower, so they could go for this Pyromancer, but again, Anthony, the vision control, the positioning, all of it, so much in favor of Order of the Blight. LWUB aren't even comfortable stepping forward. This is why wards are so impactful in a MOBA like Smite. You cannot walk blindly into the jungle.
Oh man, really started. The go bud, Nasa the Pasta was in the backline and caught. Frandir already used a fatal strike, but still had room to pick up Asta the Pasta to get the rampage. Safa left alone with Garrett, took some poke, but not as much as Zoriat, who's gone to blue, and things are falling apart. Can Apple Toast save it? Finds Safa, Discord hit on Framdir, and that was enough to calm the storm for the moment. LWUB only lost 2, but they were knocking on losing way more than 2.
And backing up there, definitely the right call, because that could have been really bad if they lost even one more member. With the health bars that Order of the Blight have left, I don't suspect that they'll be allowed to pull this Fire Giant, and in fact, they're just going to get a reset off here. Which honestly opens the door for Storming Shadows and the rest of LWUB to get some of this vision control, man, because take a look at the map everywhere. They need to walk
you keep
forward.
harping on it. I wish they could hear you.
I really do too, man, because somebody's got to buy a damn ward. It's only Apple Toast that walks out of base with one. He finally sentries some of this vision, but if you are normal and not sentry warding your own jungle, that means you are never allowed to step up into this pit and actually try to pull the Fire Giant for yourself. The ward coverage that LWUB have right now tells me that they're going to be sitting around the back camps, around the red buff, around the blue buff, not actually getting near the Fire Giant pit, because that's where their vision runs out. This is defensive warding in a nutshell. You want to make sure you're not getting flanked. You want to know when they're trying to come up towards you, but you're not playing aggressively even if you get a good fight. You still don't have any vision on where this long-range sniper Vulcan could be. You don't necessarily know where Blue or Framdir are going to be if they're off in the wings of the jungle. It's so hard for LWUB to walk up here. They're essentially gambling their health bars in doing so.
Framdir takes half health of poke just by stepping up. And at some point, you have to feel like the ADCs are going to show up as well. They're both too talented not to. Just a matter of who can find the perfect opening, I suppose. Cheeto gonna get poked out significantly from Apple Toast.
Great
Maybe
wall.
this is the opening. The wall stops LeMan, but a pull in on Garrett drops him to half, forced into the Cosmos. Order of the Blight on full retreat just from the Cosmos, and LWUB could look to reinitiate, but Garrett is off the mark. 4-man knockup from Zoriat, but is there any response? Shadows will certainly try, but Zoriat is dropped. The apple bounces perfectly, but doesn't do more than that. Mounted Archery just trying to escape, and LWUB cannot find an opening, but Order of the Blight is cracking skulls in the meantime. They've dropped 3, only 2 left, and they're forced to use Blinks. Order of the Blight has completely taken control. They're gonna cut off Asta the Pasta. No, the spaghetti's sticking to the wall. It's done. It's done. He's gone. Asta's dropped.
Excuse me, sir, that's the second Awilishult you've used in this fight. That should be a longer cooldown than that, I thought. That's how all that started, is we got a tail whip into the Awilishult. Tell me if you've heard that one before. And apparently Bumba's Spear, Jotun's Wrath, all that good happy stuff, I get it, Rosie. It's still a very short cooldown, I feel like. It just feels a little unfair that you get to use it at the beginning and at the end of the team fight. But at the end of the day, Order of the Blight use all of the tools that they have available. It's a 0-second cooldown at all ranks. That makes a lot of sense. It kind of feels like it. But Order of the Blight successfully breach this game wide open and shift their lead from 5,000 gold, now 8,000 gold, 9 in the lead. And it's only going to get bigger from here, Anthony. They've still got these tier 2 towers to knock down. That's another 2,000 to 3,000 to 4,000 gold just waiting for them to collect on. Primal Fury also available. Pyromancer. All of this is up just because that Fire Giant fight took so long. and they finally got the payout on all of the ward coverage that they had, man. Just preventing LWUB from stepping up aggressively, from finding any of their own opportunities, and only responding to the aggression of Order the Blight meant that LWUB was in a losing position on that Fire Giant pit from the offset. As soon as we saw one member get plucked in, I think it was Garrett, or it might have been Oscar the Pasta that got plucked in by that initial gravity surge, it was already a losing fight. They almost converted it. The dive in from Zoriat, the blink knock up, the Spear of Mortal Pain was incredible from Zoriat there, but the penetration that Framdir's getting in these fights, man, he's getting these executes off, he's creating space for Blue. Blue gets to just completely free cast in these, gets a Bloodforge shield, gets to knock down an additional member as a result of it. All of it is looking so good for Order the Blight. But this is where the game gets much more difficult. Discordia, like Merlin, is another character that clears the wave fairly fine from a distance without putting herself in too much danger, and still has cooldowns required to prevent the enemies from stepping up. If you get caught by one purple carpet of death from Apple Toast, if one of your ADCs stands too close to one of the frontliners, your siege is over, man. You're taking 8, 9, 1,000 damage just for getting hit by one of those buttons. Gotta be careful here. Order of the Blight seem to know that. They're gonna instead send Blue over, play this a little bit slower, but LWUB can put their foot down here.
Garrett steps up lightly. We're knocking on 30 minutes. 11 to 17. Kaizo walked you through the gold, by the way. If you need a recommendation for the design team, if your goal is to raise a Wheelish's cooldown, I will use my handwriting and be that reference you may need. EFG is going to be a while away. The Fire Giant that Order of the Blight got was not, which is why they're just cleaning up these tier 2s, playing it safe, stripping the map of as much as they possibly can just to keep LWUB on the back foot. And game 1, we were really transitioning, despite both these teams being juggernauts, to Order of the Blight being the underdog. Now in game 2, it's completely swapped, and it feels like LWUB just cannot get a comfortable footing in these fights. If there was a moment in team fights, you talked about the coordination for Order of the Blight. If there's something you could change for LWUB in these team fights, if there's somebody you could get to a better spot, play around, what are you looking at?
Well, it's gonna sound funny, but you're gonna have to trust me on this one. It's gotta be better coordination between the solo laner and the jungler, because wouldn't you know it, Garrett needs to dunk down at the same time as Zoriat is blinking in. The same issue that Framdir and Blue were having in the last game. Zoriat is creating infinite amounts of space in these fights. He's getting everybody with the Spear of Mortal Pain. He's got 3 people on him. But he doesn't have the damage required to kill them all by himself, Anthony. He needs Garrett in there, in the backline with him as he's going in to help finish off some of those members. Because right now, the way that LWUB are playing these fights, Anthony, is just essentially creating time for them to take down the front line. Zoriat is stalling the back line to prevent them from getting into the fight and hoping that the Order of the Blight front line, that Lehman, that Framdir, that Blue, all of these guys are going to die before Zoriat dies 1v3.
That's true. Garrett actually had to use through the Cosmos multiple times, getting poked out halfway through before the fight started.
Yep, and if he's using that cooldown offensively, if he's using it in coordination with the engage from Zoriat, it's a much more valuable resource. Because right now, through the Cosmos is a safety tool for Garrett. That's how he's been using it for these past 5 minutes. We need him to go in at the same time as Zoriat. We need that coordination, that communication between them, especially now that Cheeto's beads are now down, forced out by Apple Toast there. This is an incredible opportunity for them to break this game wide open.
Some poke has found Safa. A nice change of pace for LWUB. Zoriat is standing on a mountain of wards, but they do have the sentry advantage, so now Zoriat is in the clear. We're looking for the duo to go in. Zoriat needs his wingman, and if he doesn't get it, Order of the Blight's going to have the advantage. The EFG pops out, and the dance ensues. Order of the Blight taking the far back side, but we know their initiation. They send Sobek forward, and Framdir is right behind, while Blue stays in the back, waiting for the gravity surge.
And they do also have that tail whip combo to pull somebody in with the gravity surge, as you said. So that could be their entry moment, but Across the way, it's Asta the Pasta fishing for these walls. He's gotten a couple of them around this choke point right here where Apple Toast is sitting right now. If you can get one of them around the Fire Giant pit, get Lehman down like this, could be a good opportunity.
They have the wall, but there's just not follow-up yet, but it is going to force the Fields of Love. That could be big for LWUB with that off the table. Or the Blight now has to step back, and they're down an ultimate.
Yeah, nothing invested from LWUB there, whereas they get the beads and the ult off of Cheeto. They've got to step up more aggressively now. You will not get a better opportunity completely for free if you're LWUB here. There's still a little bit lacking on vision here to know where all of the Order of the Blight members are, but this is still going to be your best chance if you're LWUB to get in here and get into this Fire Giant pit. As Order of the Blight grab this Pyromancer, doesn't look like they even want to contest. You gotta put your foot on the gas here, Anthony. This is the most critical moment of the game.
Yeah, someone's got to
Fire
call
Giant. It's so tense, but at some point you need to be willing to take a risk, and this is your best moment to take that calculated risk if you're LWUB. Because if you wait 40 more seconds, if Cheeto gets those beads back online, if you get those Fields of Love back available for the Order of the Blight, they're not going to wait any longer. They've proven time and time again they're willing to play aggressively. They will step forward and find their own opportunities. The window is slowly closing here for LWUB. They got to do something now.
Oh, they might do it here with Framdir, but Apple Toast is forced away and loses beads, very poked out. Actually going to try to recall. Sobek goes aggressive. The wall staves! Storming Shadows from Disaster, and the Apple of Discord hits. Will Earthshaker find it? Yes! And Apple Toast is gone! Zoriat is in the back line and does find Safa in return, and everything is breaking down, and Storming Shadows is trying to make the plays happen. Goes in with Mounted Archery and finds one, but you can't stop the unstoppable Framdir, and they're both gonna have to back away. Both teams are just hitting a wall, not just Ymir. Order the Blight, trying to go aggressive again. Asta the Pasta trying to save Storming Shadows, who is now alone and just trying to auto. He kills Framdir somehow. Cheeto can't get back to him because of Zoriat. Storming Shadows trying to avoid blue. Cheeto dropped by Zoriat, now in the grave, and Storming somehow lived.
Storming from the grave saves this team fight for LWUB. Safa gets an incredible Earthshaker off to break open this fight, completely just outright one-shotting Apple Toast, who, by the way, had the Aegis available, didn't invest it on that Earthshaker cooldown. I don't know if he maybe thought he was outside of it, got crowd controlled, whatever the case may be, did not use it to immune the Earthshaker, so no mid laner for LWUB could have been the end there. That could have been the moment where this game's broken open, Order the Blight steamroll that fight, force it down, shove in a mid-Phoenix, maybe get the Fire Giant, could have potentially ended the game there. But instead it was Storming Shadows, mounting archery, diving into the backline, getting basically melee range with anybody willing to step up to him, and using every last drop of red on his HP bar to fight back into the Order of the Blight composition. Keeps his head cool, fights off the Awilish when she blinks in, excellent target recognition once the Awilish and the Achilles are on him at the same time, whittling down one health bar, not splitting the damage between two. A whole lot went right for that fight, man. Zoriat gets a great engage as well, but the MVP, the star player of it, is absolutely Storming Shadows on this Hachiman. And now it's Order of the Blight once again in a position where they feel very confident. They're 13,000 gold in the lead. They have excellent vision control. They're standing aggressively in the Fire Giant pit, but they need their entry frag. They need some way to break open LWUB, and Storming Shadows has not been given it to them easy.
And to your point, at this point, gold matters not. Zoriat does matter a lot. The Fields of Love come out after the Gravity Surge, but Zoriat's still above half health. Apple of Discord is used onto the Sobek, who was lurking to try to make him back up. But Storming Shadows is gone on the pluck. Tail Whip not included. Now 15-21, and that one was an impactful member. EFG now on the chopping block.
EFG should be uncontested here. Looks like Apple Toast might want it. Not on vision just yet, and actually LWUB are still stepping up. Frontliners and the mid laner for LWUB approaching the Fire Giant pit here, Anthony. They might gamble it.
Apple Toast is lurking, a blink forward from Blue, and now Apple Toast is gone without even being able to contest. That is the backline of LWUB completely evaporated. Order of the Blight gets the EFG. And from this point, the world is their oyster. They can do anything they want. The entire map is their kingdom. LWUB can only look to back up and prepare for the onslaught.
And what a tragic moment for Storming Shadows there. 4 seconds on the beads when he gets hit by that pluck means that he's not available for this fight in the Phoenix either. Lehman steps in with the rest of the team. Middle Phoenix goes down for free, and Asta's pulled back in.
The spaghetti is all over the floor, and Pasta's in the dirt. Blue has dropped the Emir, and now it's up to just 3 members of LWUB. Order the Blight is taking their time. However, they're going to clean up the Phoenixes one at a time, which will give time for Apple Toast to respawn. They're not going to take the 5v3.
That's a little surprising there. I feel like with 10 more seconds, everybody's pretty healthy. I mean, it's only Lehman that's missing a reasonable chunk of his health bar. I feel like you could have potentially gotten that last bird, and they're actually pinging the bird right now thinking, you know, maybe we could have stepped in and grabbed that one, but instead backing up to the Sony Fury. That's still going to be very difficult for the LWUB composition to defend against. One Phoenix down and left is already hard when you're defending EFG and right lane, but when you have Oni and Fire Waves pushing down the middle and left lanes at the same time as you've got 5 people, all with this enhanced Fire Giant buff, all with every single relic available, trying to push down this right lane, it's going to be very difficult for them to defend. You got to really make use of Garrett on this Ratatosker. He's got the semi-global ultimate. He can defend that left wave sort of okay and maybe make it back to a fight and right. But honestly, Anthony, at this point, you're thinking, do we give up this Phoenix? Do we all in the game off of this next defense attempt? Do we try to just make sure that we can clear the wave ahead of time and then not fight once they actually try to step up for the siege? It's a lot of question marks in the air for LWUB. They're going to have to come up with answers very quickly.
And what's really fascinating to me is that all these questions exist simply because they chose not to end. And maybe it was respect of the Hachiman. Maybe they were worried about the respawn timers. They weren't significantly high, but they also weren't that low. I believe it was 15 seconds on Apple Toast when they chose to walk away. So if things go wrong from this point forward, if LWUB finds a defense, if they find a deicide, it could be game. It's gonna be hard for that to not be a moment that is looked back on and been a panic. But
Yeah,
with that, the pause is over and we get to find out, Kaizo.
Yeah, I did use the word calculated risk earlier for LWUB when we were talking about having them step up aggressively into the Fire Giant pit. And I think that's sort of the same conversation Order of the Blight was having. And a lot of times, especially if you lose the previous game, teams are less likely to take a bigger risk for a bigger payoff. I think that even if they get wiped there, every single tier 1 tower and a fire creep wave in mid and left means that LWUB can't end the game by any stretch of the imagination, and they certainly can't get a Phoenix as a result of it. I think you could have maybe tried to shove it into the Titan room. You certainly could have taken that bird for free, and they realized that pretty quickly, but instead they play it safe. They've got the Oni wave in left, and now this is their moment to breach the base in right.
LWUB can buy time with Pasta using the walls, but only so much time. The Phoenix siege begins, and the Phoenix is gone before it had a chance at survival. Order of the Blight beginning to step up, and the Titan is not looking amazing. Storming Shadows has to stand by it to protect it. Apple Toast maybe standing a bit too far in the danger zone for sure. Now gets stunned out. The wall for safety. Apple Toast is forced to use the Aegis, and Garrett dove in really deep, but for no return. And now Zoriat dives the backline, but you are no longer Robin. The Apple of Discord bounce did catch, but is it too late? Garrett found one, but they lost Zoriat. Cheeto now has a double kill, and Order of the Blight is stepping up. Blue's unstoppable, and the Titan doesn't have much hope left. Feeds forced on the Hachiman. Order of the Blight on the Titan. Down to a quarter, down to 10. It's gonna fall. Nothing LWUB can do but go to game 3. Order of the Blight, take it.
And what an incredible attempt at that siege defense. It looked a little sketchy because everybody except for Safa died there, or excuse me, still alive there for Order of the Blight, but LWUB executed that about as well as you can. Your biggest threat on that enhanced Fire Giant siege defense on your Titan is Safa launching a max range Earthshaker and then reducing half of your Titan's HP in the blink of an eye. They certainly understood that was the potential problem, and they sent everyone to deal with him. They had the Ratatosker blink in, they had Zoriat going on him, blink ult as well. They forced his Aegis, they forced his beads, they forced Shell off of him. But at the end of the day, it took so long to take him down, it took so long to kill him, that everybody else for the Order of the Blight was still allowed to free cast on the front line, the back line, the Titan. I mean, you had your pick of the litter at that point because they invested so much into killing Safa on the Vulcan, and he lived for so long. It was a good effort. It was their best attempt, but unfortunately was not enough.
I look back at 4 things. 3 of them are the things you talked about. It was better coordination. We certainly saw it. The combination of the tail whip or the pluck into the Wheelish was disgusting. We wanted to see our friend get comfortable in the solo lane, and the Achilles was certainly the answer there. And finally, Cupid value was the 4th thing. We were curious about it, and man, by the end, did it show up.
That was my wild card, man. I set it on the desk, and I think that it was a little sketchy for me, even in the middle stages of the game, like around the Fire Giant pit. It was used primarily as a defensive tool. Like if we had a pluck mist or something, then immediately the response is let's use Cupid ult so that they don't step too far forward off of a good wall or something in response. But if that's all you need it for, sometimes that's all you got to do. Sometimes your job is not to be the flashy player. You don't have to get all the kills. You don't even have to deal all the damage. If you are
Just have
there
to win.
preventing the enemy team from taking the game away,
Yep.
sometimes that's all you got to do. And I think that Cheeto did an excellent job of that here in game number 2, ensuring that LWUB couldn't step up and capitalize on any of those opportunities.
I also feel as if Order of the Blight's draft is something that we talked in the moment about. There were some things we were curious about. We did like it. And I think the control that they had over what Garrett had to play in the jungle is a big thing to look back on.
Yeah, Garrett was kind of a driving force in game number 1, but I didn't really feel like the Ratatosker got what we needed out of it here in game number 2. Obviously, it's a different style of pick, but still can be played somewhat similar. I mean, Ratatosker, like the Awilish, another character that comes online around 12 to 15 minute mark and can pretty much comfortably play in the game from that point forward. I'd like to see him back on something that can help facilitate the solo lane a little bit more. I don't think we saw nearly enough attention over there this time around, and that seemed to be where LWUB was making their bread and butter in game number 1. And even with a little bit of a deficit, even when his team was losing, Zoriat still looked insane on the Kokolin. Like, he was on the losing team, so it doesn't look as good on the scoreboard, but my man was getting all the value you could ask for him. I'd like to see you, if you're LWUB, enabling Zoriat a little bit more, understanding that Storming Shadows is going to do what Storming Shadows does, and you can kind of leave him in the oven for a bit and then come back to him later. I think the solo lane pressure, who wins that matchup, is going to be the name of the game going into game number 3.
And that is the big thing to look for. And with game 3 around the corner, I think we're going to have to see you there, because I think it's time for a bit of a breather in the meantime. We'll be right back in GSL.
So cliche, I see the sparks you throw my way. I know your name is written on everyone's mind. Your whole show is captivating me, but don't think that I can see right through that disguise. But when you got close to me, you had me falling so hard, baby, yeah, now I get it. You got heads turning, and you don't even try. Well, would you look at that? My glass is empty. How about I get another drink, baby? Okay, I get it. took a second chance, trusted you again. I feel shattered. Broken strings, cause you play me like a violin. Shame on me for all your 7 deadly sins. Had it all, but you craved attention. Drowning in your own reflection. Put me down just to see me get back up again. 6 feet under and you're ready to give all the pain. If I was your new addition, you make me part of your equation. Shattered from the past, wish you were my last. Shattered me to pieces like broken glass. Frozen looking at pictures that we took back in the summer. I thought that I would remember how it used to feel, but this isn't real. Now we're over. Take it all, there's nothing left here anyway. We used to talk, but now we don't know what to say. Now we're just two passing strangers. We tried, you lied, goodbye forever. Put me down just to see me get back up again. 6 feet under and you're ready to give all the pain. If I was your new addition, you make me part of your equation. Shattered from the past, wish you were my last. Shattered me to pieces like broken glass. Legends never die when the world is calling you. Can you hear them screaming out your name? Legends never die, they become a part of you. Every time you play far-reaching greatness, relentless, you survive. They never lose hope when everything's cold in the fire.
Hello and welcome back to GSL. A mid-season set has now gained big game feel. Game 3 between LWUB and Order of the Blight. Once again, I'm Anthony Mellum. I'm joined by Kaizo on the cast, and Rosie is running us through production. And Kaizo, it feels like we've hit every single aspect of these two teams. I feel like we know them in and out, but yet there's so much on the horizon for this game 3.
And there's already new stuff here in the game. Like, I don't think that we saw Giannis picked or banned at all.
Which is
Definitely not
interesting,
picked, but I don't think we've seen him banned at all
which is
in
odd
this
because it's a
set.
target ban for Apple Toast.
Right. I mean, it's gotta be, but you'd think that that would have come through up until this point if they were so worried about it.
And why didn't Apple play it game 2?
Exactly. That's kind of where my mind's at right now. I don't know if this is like Order the Blighter thinking, game 3, this is where you want your game-changing gods where they can take control of it seemingly by themselves, and Yana certainly fits that bill. It's a feast or famine kind of character. And speaking of feasting, we've got double feasting on okay, no, it's Loki. I thought there was Bakasura a second
Actually,
time.
that's kind of lore accurate.
Yeah, it very well may be. He was just posing as Bakasura, and then next we'll see another Bakasura, and it'll just be the Morrigan.
See, now you're cooking. That is a well-deserved Achilles ban right there, taking it away from Fradmir. Necessary to do.
Yeah, I think that giving him the Achilles again is
Ooh,
not
they
where
left
I'd want to
Robin
go
open.
because he looked transformative between game number 1 and game number 2. The tier was fine, I guess. I mean, say what you will about him falling behind. At some point, it's just very difficult to play from that deficit. But
I
on
will
the
end
Achilles, he
this
certainly
fight.
looked
They took
much, much
Hachi?
better. So I like that they're taking it away here. But leaving the Hachi open, man, you said it yourself. Giving Storming Shadows this pick was it's a bit of an oversight in my eyes.
I'm shocked
These
for two
immortals need
reasons.
to be taught
Now
a
I'm shocked
lesson.
even further. There's no way Robin gets through, right? They didn't ban Robin. Elwub didn't first pick Robin. They first picked Hachi. If Elwub get Hachi and Robin, I don't know if we need to cast this.
I don't know if I think you might be right, man. Like at some point, it's like you're just giving them too much. Like you're letting them have all of the toys, and then you're playing with
Okay.
clothes hangers or something.
A slight correction here is the Giannis was also
Onwards
a
to
Loki in disguise. It
victory!
was actually a Robin ban, which is
Oh,
why it was a Hachi first pick, and the Robin
okay.
was a bit of a misplay. That's now corrected on your screen. So again, Robin was banned in place of Giannis. So Hachi and Nike are not crazy picks. They actually do make sense.
And my head can rest assured a little bit because with the performance had in game number 1, I don't know why you wouldn't pick the
I
Robin
am
first
coming
overall for
for
Zoriat
you.
over the Hachi. As good as Storming Shadows has looked on this god, I would have preferred the Robin, but we're all short up now. We can move down a little bit further. And this is the Thanatos that we were talking about earlier on, Anthony. Another one of
That's
those
correct.
characters where back against the wall, take the game into your own hands, do things
Try and keep
completely
up.
on your own at times, and certainly a much more aggressive pick even earlier on than we've seen from Garrett.
Elwub kind of wrestled this out of Order of the Blight. If you think about it, Elwub's playstyle has entirely dictated Order of the Blight's picks and bans, while Elwub has been able to comfortably go with the Baka and the Kali the whole time. And I mean, look at this. The Loki is for Garrett. The Baba was for Toast game 1. The Robin was for Zoriat game 1. The Ymir has been a problem. Like everything adds up. It's all the T's are crossed, I's are dotted, and still something gets through for Garrett. Something gets through for Storming Shadows. The only real question mark is the Nike, but it's there's certainly things there, and I'm sure you can kind of give us a better understanding of the Nike
Who's
pick
ready
here.
to party?
The Nike is just very good against teams that don't have a way to shut down the shield. A lot of teams right now are going double ADC compositions, which is sort of why the Nike started to make her way into the meta. And being able to just stand in front of an
None will
ADC
flee
or
my
two or
grasp.
however many they might have is always difficult to deal with. Obviously, she also does really good damage. She's got really high base damage on that first ability. Also, her ultimate ability, a giant slow field, making use of Runeforged Hammer, which is very good right now. She's also a very good builder of not only Bluestone Pendant, but also that Sedge of the Old Guard, both of which are two of the top picks that you can go for in the solo lane right now. Sort of just one of those characters that is resurfacing despite some of her old problems because she uses the items very effectively right now. You can still sunder her out of the shield, that still feels really bad, but she still has a lot of good tools specifically that are very strong right now in the meta.
The Ganesh and the Persephone are strikingly more interesting to me, at least, than the Bacchus Hunbots. The Bacchus isn't bad. The Bacchus, I can see the logic behind. The CC's crazy. The Hunbots, same story. Classic good pick. There was a lot banned. The Ganesh Persephone. I have my personal love of this combo because it's a delete combo waiting to happen if you can get
Hmm.
stuck and pillared. It's like a shake and bake kind of vibe, but you're just stuck in place and just watching your screen turn gray. But talk me through your perspective on the choices here for the dual lane. The Cupid run back against the Hachi, but the supports going two different routes, and Ganesh having a favorable matchup.
Yeah, I would say that you're right. Ganesh does have a much more favorable matchup into Bacchus. It is worth noting that previously in other patches, you could use a silence wherever a jump is landing and it cancels the damage and any crowd control that would go with it. Recently, in the last patch or two, we've seen that change. So now, even if you have the Ohm silence at the flop location, it still goes through. You still get the damage, you still get the CC. So it's not quite as good of a matchup as it used to be, but still preventing the Bacchus from getting off the ground to begin with, stopping out that burp so that you don't get stunned by it. And then, as you mentioned previously, the Grasp of Death into the Dharmic Pillars combo is
It's gross.
incredible at killing frontliners, specifically those that don't have any way to immune crowd control. If you're looking at a Jing 10 or something, he just probably uses his own ult in return and is probably okay. But a Bacchus, a Hunbats, a Thoth, a Cupid, anybody that doesn't have beads available that gets hit by that combination is more than likely to be seeing the grayscale. So I think you've painted the picture pretty perfectly where Ganesh Persephone, a very good combo, has a lot of tools to take on the Bacchus, but still have to deal with some of the woes of just not having a whole lot of early aggression. Thoth Bacchus Hunbats is a much more competent, I would say, early game combination than Thanatos Ganesh Persephone. It's really only the Thanatos to drive that mid 3v3 for the LWUB composition, whereas Order of the Blight, as long as they have Hunbat's ult, can really start fighting from minute 5 onward.
But when we get late game, things are gonna get spicy. And speaking of late game, let's get into the start of game number 3 between LWUB and Order of the Blight. Once again, I'm Anthony Mellum. Kaizo is alongside me for what is sure to be a crazy game. And Rosie, we pushing all the buttons. Let's do it.
Let's get into it, man. Frandir, again, going over to this Wukong. I want to touch on the solo lane matchups, and we said previously, I think that even I did a VOD review recently with Gormizer and JMac, and they said solo lane is 9 times out of 10 not where you want to be talking about. But with the way this set has been going, man, and how impactful both of these solo laners have been in all of these games so far, it's hard not to look over here, especially when you've got a solo lane that's so volatile like this one. Both of these characters do incredible amounts of base damage. They both clear the wave very, very effectively, and as long as they're willing to fight, can absolutely look for solo kills. They could walk away, they could just go farm something else, but something tells me that the way this game has been going so far, it's unlikely that they will be just farming the waves and then walking away. Something tells me these guys are going to be butting heads pretty much until the Titan falls.
Yeah, there's a lot of places to look. There's a lot of things that could be projected onto us, and the soul lane is one that we have to watch the minimap at all times to see the state of things. I mean, look at it now. They're below half, and they're still trading blows in their wave. They don't want to stop.
He could
But
die here.
the jungle rotations are also big to look for because look at the health Zoriat's at, but look at where the junglers are going. Last game, they would have been beelining it for the soul lane.
And this time around, they seem content to just hang out in this mid lane and contest the farm, which did look like it went to LWUB, and he's going to step on a ward here. They do know that Garrett's over here, but question is, do they know in time? Blink in, Scythe off the mark. Flop will knock up the aggression from Garrett, so end of the day, Blink expended for basically nothing, whereas across the way, the solo laner for Order of the Blight, Blue, excuse me, a little gassy. Blue successfully lends some aggression to the solo lane, which is honestly where I think your eyes have to be. He's going back over here one more time, and I think we could end up seeing a kill in either one of these dual lanes pretty much at any point we pan away.
And now we do have the jungle in solo, but Zoriat, with the courage and patience of a king, just waits it out and jumps away. Wasn't afraid of the cooldowns and was able to get out of harm fairly easily, all things considered. The flop in, Storming Shadows is at half, but it's hard to imagine that Cheetah would have an easy entrance into a crazy fight. And while game 1 was calm, much like this, game 2 was chaotic, game 3 we're leaning calm, but Garrett might be somebody to make things break open. We do see that the Thanatos is getting aggressive, but again, just kind of bringing it on back and relaxing a little bit.
It feels wrong, though, Anthony. It really does. With how tense the last game was and how early we saw the aggression in game number 2, to just sit back, relax, and watch these two teams farm it up feels like such a dramatic shift from the way that we were talking about the game in the second one. Like, I feel like there should be so much more going on the map, but at the end of the day, game 2 was the anomaly. Like, we've seen so many of these teams just farm it out for the first 10, 15, even 20 minutes before we see any of the aggression. And especially with their back against the wall, I mean, both of these teams need just one more game to get the victory. It's no surprise that they're playing the way they are.
Fear No Evil comes out and Zoriat is forced to use the Sentinel of Zeus, but gets away. So Fear No Evil was dropped, Somersault Cloud was used, and Zoriat still gets to live. So all that aggression, all that attention that we keep talking about in solo, so far it's actually been a real hindrance to Order of the Blight. They're putting a lot into paying attention to what Zoriat's doing to make sure Faradmir is safe.
And Garrett over here on the left-hand side does have ult available as the shield buff is under contest, but seems that Order of the Blight have sniffed this one out. Purple buff could be next on the menu. No flop available for Bacchus means he can't walk up too quickly.
There it is.
LWUB will kind of walk away with a bit of a victory there. The first real semblance of aggression we've seen outside of those ults getting traded in the right lane. It might be indicative of the pace that we'll see for the rest of this game, Anthony. I mean, it is a drastic change from the way that game number 2 went, don't get me wrong, but don't forget how game 1 went either. These two teams were kind of content to hang out. It was 2 early kills in the solo lane in game 1, and then a whole lot of nothing for quite a while after that. And don't forget that both of these compositions as well are pretty content to get at least 10, if not 12 or 15 minutes further along. Thoth needs those stacks on the passive, needs a bit more cooldown, already has the Chronos Pendant online, so instead gonna itemize some power more than likely. And the Persephone one that doesn't really start to deal damage until you get those levels online, but we might not get to wait any longer as Zoriat gets the solo kill over Framdir in the right lane.
It finally happened. Something was bound to give out there eventually. It was a matter of time, and Zoriat had time on their side, gets the better of Faradmir. And another thing we could look at and needs to be in the forefront of the mind is the ADCs. Craziness between them in game 1. They had a lot of beef to work out. Game 2, it was a farming simulator, and then they both showed up and were both difference makers. Storming Shadows at time seemed like he had all of LWUB on his back, while Cheeto pulled through in the big moment and ultimately helped secure the victory in game 2. Who do you expect to get the better this time? Or maybe more simply, are we going to see another farming simulator? Are we going to see these guys in maybe 15, 20 minutes?
I think that it's probably going to be a little bit more involved now that we've got First Blood already on the map, because that's kind of the moment where the game breaks open. It's very tense until that point because nobody wants to give up that First Blood bounty. But as soon as that's off the table, I feel like all bets are kind of off at that point. You can start playing a lot more aggressively, especially with the itemization that these solo laners are going for. I mean, both of them going a Bluestone Pendant and Sun Wukong going for a Soul Leader means that he's going to be cudgeling the wave and then walking away if Zariat is going to let him. I think that was kind of my question mark, is whether or not he's going to be allowed to do that, but based on the pacing of this lane, how aggressively he's playing, the fact that Nike seems content to just clear the wave and then walk back under tower, that opens up the entirety of the right side of the map for the Sun Wukong to start proxying waves, start invading these back camps, And then once you attract that attention to the right-hand side of the map, it's Smite 101. You go immediately to the Gold Fury, you can contest the Stygian Beacon, you can siege a tower, you can invade a buff on left. It's sort of going to open up this map a little bit more, whereas when everybody's just farming in lane, everybody's sitting under tower, it'd be much more difficult to find a place to put your aggression.
I think a big answer to that is going to be Garrett and where we see the Thanatos go and when. I mentioned that last week Garrett had a absolutely spectacular performance on Thanatos, not just in 1, but in 2 games. If it could be repeated, that could be the difference maker for LWUB. If it isn't recaptured, though, then LWUB's going to find themselves with a big lack of damage for a long time. You touched on that in picks and bans. You mentioned that a lot of LWUB's game plan is they need to kind of be not necessarily carried, but carried through the early mid game. We'll see if that is the case. Fields of Love come out on the Storming Shadows. He dashes away. Is okay. Cheeto gonna dash through him. Garrett's trying to get there in time. Execute into the sky, and Storming Shadows finally gets the better of Cheeto. He had help this time, but look who's around the corner. It's Blue, and Blue's got a double kill with some help from Fear No Evil. Storming Shadows finally got the better of Cheeto with some help of his own, just for Blue to snatch it right back.
And an incredible counter engage there for Blue as we see Dharmic Pillars forced out here. Grasp of Death also. It's off the mark though. And Apple Toast will get the kill. A little bit sketchy there, but they end up getting it done. But back to that engage in left lane. I mean, if you're blink ulting as Garrett on this Thanatos, you better be getting that kill and getting out of there, because that's all of your resources completely invested there. And the fact that the beads were used aggressively from Storming Shadows to get out of the Fields of Love, that's just everything expended for LWUB. And so close to the tower line, you could not draw that up better for Blue. He had so much time to react to that play as well because of how long it took Garrett to get that kill onto Cheeto. If that goes down a little bit cleaner, if you only need the blink, maybe not the ult or vice versa, you could potentially try to fight your way back into that. But because they took so long, because Blue got to re-engage right on the tower line, gets both players with no CC immunity, and manages to split them up so they can't put their backs together like an action movie and just start shooting at the walls. I mean, it's beautiful for Blue that he gets to get that one down and prevent this Thanatos from getting off to a bigger lead.
Heading up on 10 minutes, 3-2. The gold is calm and not really the story so far. Very close to even. LWUB with a very, very slight advantage. An interesting thing that I've noticed is the relic choices out of solo and the beads from Vladimir. Very, very necessary, you think, or maybe getting a bit preemptive?
It's tough because if you're gonna go damage, you typically want a little bit more survivability, and you do have the Soul Eater for some additional lane sustain. We're basically out of Sun Wukong laning phase now, just because he does so much damage to the wave. He doesn't have to really worry about getting poked out. He can just cudgel it, walk away, do his own thing. I think that the beads is probably better here, but the blink means that that the Nike is going to be much more capable of getting to the backline very effectively, and having to wait until level 12 and onward to get that additional aggression for the Sun Wukong kind of stifles his ability to get involved earlier on. I mean, a lot of the power for this pick comes from you clear the wave, you clear another wave behind the tower, you clear a third wave behind the second tower, and then you rotate for a Gold Fury. And if you don't have a blink to engage on that Gold Fury pit up until you get to level 12 mark, I think that hamstrings what you otherwise would have been capable of. So it'll stall him out, but in the end won't hurt him too much.
Blue gonna run into Storming Shadows and get aggressive. Jump forward. Mounted archery is forced from the Hachiman. Garrett is lurking and does have some help in the form of Asa the Pasta, but I'm not liking the advantage here. Level 12 is the Hoombots, and that's a bit more than Garrett's interested in risking. Will back up to his own speed, but Hoombots looking to contest that speed and getting aggressive. Zoria doing the same thing, defending their blue buff on the right side of the map, while left side of the map, the war breaks out. Purple buff is going nuts right now. The Thanatos is in the sky. Who did he look for? He landed, but nobody's dead yet. Matter of fact, LWUB's having some problems. Storming Shadows is very low. Picks up the shield just to survive. Look at the Bacchus. The Bacchus is no more. Garrett gets the credit for it, then goes aggressive, and the Scythe does numbies. Oh Cheeto lucky that this distance was in favor of the Cupid there because my goodness.
That scythe is hitting, bro. And just think, Thanatos is 2 levels down here. Garrett is 2 levels down on the Hunbats, who traditionally thought of as the mid to late game character, versus Thanatos, the early game behemoth. So imagine if that Thanatos is level 12, a little bit of additional damage might have honestly been enough to outright kill Cheeto there, even from a distance. But at the end of the day, despite all of the messiness of that fight, it's LWUB that get the better of it and end up grabbing this beacon as well, the first one to spawn in at 12 minutes. And we saw this from them in game number 1 as well. They're very comfortable around those spawn timers of that Stygian beacon. One of them isn't going to be the end of the world. 2 starts to feel a little bad. If you get all 3 of them, that's 3% movement speed, which goes along very well with the Nike passive, also giving you team-wide movement speed, plus the additional structure damage. 15 additional percent to structures and objectives means that the LWUB comp is going to be just outright favored around any of these objective contests anytime we go for a siege defense or offense. Keep your eye on that next Stygian beacon timer, because you can afford to give away one, but you don't want to start blundering every single one of them to the LWUB comp.
We've seen that they've put so much emphasis on it. In order, the Blight last time had 3, and that was where their big difference came from. Storming Shadows and Asta the Pasta doing well to defend their shield buff and got some poke on to Bacchus, but look at the cavalry. 4 members in the dual lane. This could turn into something, but Thanatos and Persephone are both lurking, so kind of a nothing burger of rotations, as the 4v4 isn't much of a 4v4 and more of a 4 looking for.
Yeah, and at this stage of the game, that's pretty common. I mean, you want to prevent the enemy team from doing much of anything, but you don't really have the personnel required to just outright pull a Gold Fury at this stage, unless you get some kind of really good pick, like, for example, if a Ganesh was out of position, but he should be fine here if you can get a good gank off onto the dual lane. Otherwise, it's really on these solo laners to rotate over, and you can see Sun Wukong is at least beginning the Hajj into the left lane. Jungler's already here on the scene, but looks like the blinks will just be expended, and that'll be the end of it. We're probably just going to be farming for a little bit longer, Anthony, at least until one of these solo laners finishes bashing skulls into the other guy and can actually make some kind of rotation.
You did talk about that there'd be a point of Sun Wukong just kind of wandering around doing his thing. We're definitely by that point. A big group up around the oracles, but it hasn't amounted to much yet. Everything is still... the tension is there. It's similar to game 2. Obviously, the stakes are higher, but it feels less... While the tension's there, it feels less emotional, is what I will say. Storming Shadows and Cheeto trading blows again. Cheeto dashes away, and Storming steps up. Garrett's lurking, and maybe that's why, but you gotta respect the Bacchus too. We've seen time and time again these things go chaotic in duo, but they're going to go for it. Mounted archery wasn't quite in execute range, but didn't need it anyway. We saw what the Scythe did earlier. The Scythe continues to do Scythe things. That's the death of Cheeto. Storming Shadows finally gets the better in lane of Cheeto, and with help, and without dying.
Shocking me, frankly. I feel like with Bacchus there, Cheeto's not even really anticipating A, the tower dive, or B, to die to the tower dive. I certainly wouldn't have thought so. He uses the beads and doesn't even get to live. I think that that's based on the fact that Lehman just a little bit too close to your ADC there. You want to stand near him so that you can peel the Thanatos ult off, but you can't afford to get stunned by the same ability. I think it's the fact that the Hovering Death also clips the Bacchus that prevents any peel from coming out there that otherwise could have potentially saved Cheeto. Another couple of inches in either direction might have been able to make it so that Garrett has to use the beads to get away from that, doesn't get the kill, doesn't live. Something could have gone differently there, but instead it is just the 1-for-0 for LWUB, who are still making stuff happen on this map, Anthony. I mean, despite the fact that it's been a whole lot of nothing, they're passively farming at least a very small lead. 1,000 at 16 minutes is negligible, don't get me wrong, especially considering the leads we've seen in this set in particular. But it does mean that they're at least continuing to force small wins across the map. We're talking buff invades, we're talking farm denial to tower, we're talking better control in neutral camps. LWUB are still using their early aggression in some capacity. It's just not as explosive as a Gold Fury just yet, but with the Nike on the way here, with Sun Wukong still in right lane, that might be changing sooner rather than later.
As the Gold Fury gets lightly touched by LWUB, let's restate stakes and let's do it quick. As Garrett's in the air, both first place teams, somebody wants to make the other head to second. LWUB and Order of the Blight have been going to war, and it's going to be a war of attrition. Who will be the last one standing? Gold Fury, soon to drop. Contest from Cheeto. Will he get it? Yes, they steal it away with the help of Fear No Evil. Grasp of Death didn't quite find the Hoonbots, and he goes for the escape. Zoriat gonna chase down the back line. We've seen that a time or two, but this time it's on the Nike. And does that bring what you need? Garrett's what you need with the scythe, and goodbye to Safa. Zoriat's blinking through.
Where is he
There's
going?
nobody there. He's slamming ghosts back there. Watch out, Loki. There's one invis back there. I swear, so does Zoriat. L1 will regroup and look towards the beacon.
That there's an ancient fable in Smite where there's always a Lancelot farming your back camps whenever you're doing a major objective, and that might be what he was looking for with that blink, because certainly didn't find anything else with it, and now LWUB, after getting that first objective stolen away, rotate over and get the Pyromancer for their troubles at least, but he just killed himself! What are you doing?
All right. We'll choose to focus on Zoriat with the counter jump to knock up the Bacchus and make that an easy play for LWUB. That's what, or at least for me, that's what I'll focus on. I'll let you be Simon Cowell. I'll be Paul Epic.
Well, what's the other dude's name? I don't watch a lot of American Idol. I'm gonna test your trivia knowledge.
I mean, this is from like olden times. I'm talking the old ones. Ruben Studdard was the old one. I don't know who's on there now. I know, or not Ruben Studdard. I'm an idiot. I was a contestant.
Okay.
I'm lost. I got nothing.
I'm lost too.
I lose at old idol trivia.
Wow, what a shame. What a critical piece as a caster to know. I mean, if you don't have your...
Hey, but if you ask me new, I know
1998
Katy Perry is on there. Because, I mean,
Oh.
you know.
I like her.
See? It's not bad.
Yeah, I mean, that's fine enough. Let's get back into the game here, because we got.
Yeah, we're talking way too. We can't talk about American Idol on GSL. We gotta.
Right. It's not even American at that point. That's just Idol for them. Like, I'm sure it's very different over here. But for that Gold Fury fight, it was, I think, the Fear No Evil that actually steals that one away. Blue
Correct.
was very late on the rotation, but despite that late rotation, gets an incredible flank, unseen on the map by anybody from LWUB, to get that good penetration of the backline. He hits 2 or 3 different people and the Gold Fury with that Fear No Evil, which buys just enough time for Sun Wukong to rotate over, for the Nike to start at least losing some HP for her troubles as she was diving in. But honestly, 1-0-2, this Nike's looking very good. Even despite the fact that we saw our first decisive Gold Fury fight, it still doesn't feel like the game's any further away from parity. It's still just
Correct.
about even in the gold. XP disparities are 1 level at best in most places, call it 2 in a couple of different ones. It's a very even game here, Anthony, and it's all going to hinge around this Fire Giant. I think that with the way that we saw Game 2 Fire Giant fights go, I need LWUB to have learned from that experience. They need to get better ward coverage, they need to take their risks when they can get them and when they're actually a good payoff to do so. I don't want to see them play as passively as I did in Game 2. Game 1, they were willing to get aggressive. I need that again in Game 3.
Fear No Evil on a Storming Shadows at the shield buff. Blink forward from Garrett looking for Blue, who jumps away and is safe for the time being. Execute will come out, and they're going to look for Cheeto. No. Blue. No. Shield buff. Somebody. No. That one. Grasp misses too. LWUB just can't find the target they want. Looking side to side, going googly-eyed. You're going to have to back up and reassess the situation.
I don't hate that call from them, though. It's definitely forcing. Like, there was no opportunity. They
Correct.
were trying to make one, but it was well-timed. Like, despite the fact that they invest resources, get nothing from it, just about all of that should be coming up by the time we see this Gold Fury fight really start to kick off. I don't think that Order of the Blight are likely to immediately step up and pull it, considering they're missing Fear No Evil. They have no blink for Blue either. There's a lot missing on the map, so it's a weird fight to look at, but really there is no risk involved. All of that will be back up by the time we see this one pulled by either team. So fair enough for LWUB to at least try to break this one open before the Gold Fury spawns.
I'm scared to bring this up because I'm surely going to caster curse Garrett as Garrett's about to step
Oh,
into
no.
2 people. What have I done? The cudgel hits, but I think that's all for now, perhaps. But I'll say it quickly. 4-1, sneaky, lot of kills on the Thanatos. That's what happened last time I saw Garrett play Thanatos, and it went from like a 4-1-3 to all of a sudden a 15-2 and 5. So just keep your eyes on the Thanatos. Never let it leave your mind. LWUB and Order of the Blight are very crisscrossed right now, and Storming Shadows might be the victim. Somersault Cloud comes out, and warrior things are happening to the ADC in the left side. Storming Shadows just trying to survive. Meanwhile, Garrett is doing the opposite, taking out the Bacchus for Order of the Blight. Maybe they need that Sun Wukong. The Scythe did miss. Sentinel of Zeus cannot miss. Have you seen the size? Have you seen the double of Garrett on the Thanatos? LWUB cleans it up on the left side of the map.
In Order of the Blight, a little too overextended there. You saw them try to help out the Sun Wukong, who was diving very deep, trying to take the 1v1 with the Hachiman, but that's kind of Sun Wukong's job. Like, he's going to be way deeper than anyone else is allowed to go. You can't afford to step that far forward, and Safa tries to dash in and get some damage onto Storming Shadows.
Oh no!
Does so... Oh no.
Oh no! The screenshots can be heard clicking around the world. I am so sorry, Asta the Pasta. Thank you for Smite Savvy. I'm sorry for the Oni Fury death.
Very sad to see that Oni Fury go down, and I don't think Order of the Blight are nearly as sad about it, because they immediately grab this Pyromancer, or at least group up around it. It's going to be Nike on the defense trying to make it happen, but very low percentage play there. But back to that fight in left, Safa steps too far forward, which means that everyone else has to go too far forward, because if your Thoth is dashing in, you better be damn sure you've got somebody in front of him to make sure that people aren't going to be putting damage on him. You saw Lehman go too far forward, Cheeto also had to step up to help him, and at that point you are funneled into a choke point. And that Ganeshal was sublime from Asta the Pasta to trap everybody in, and Sun Wukong lives through all of it. So despite the fact that he's the one that created that opportunity to begin with, he walks away scot-free, and instead it's the other frontliner for Order of the Blight that ends up falling as a result of it. It's just a weird fight, man. You gotta be very disciplined if you're Safa on the Thoth, because you can't help out the dive, really. It's way too deep. It's way too far away from the rest of the people designed to keep you safe. You gotta play a little bit more discipline there.
Garrett getting some poke off onto the Bacchus. Stygian Beacon is available to capture, and for LWUB that has consistently meant group up and fight. Order of the Blight ready to meet it. Some trouble is found, and Safa is gone. Garrett made sure of that, and now goes to the sky, but the Somersault Cloud will cancel out that choice on the landing. Found the decoy, but they still will clean up. Flamdeer, another double kill, 8-1, unstoppable now for Garrett. And LWUB is going crazy, but they're doing it in small increments. But if you keep doing those increments, Kaizo, they grow and they grow, and they get to a point where if you're Order of the Blight, you can no longer ignore it. A blink forward to continue the chase. The chaos continues, but LWUB will finally realize they cannot go that deep.
Well, you know what they say, Anthony. A journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single Thanatos Death Scythe kill. That's the ancient. That's what they say. That's the
For sure.
that's
Randy Jackson. That
Randy
was the
Jackson.
third judge.
That's what Randy Jackson always said. I remember that on American Idol. He said, I loved your performance, but a Thanatos Death Scythe is the start to a journey of 1,000 miles. And that the contestants never understood it, but very clearly Garrett understands it here. You tried to curse him. You really did. You called out the 4-1.
I know. I felt guilty when I did it.
He's been going insane since then. So I think that, like, the fact that you cursed him and then you uncursed him and then you reverse cursed him and now he's 8-1. This Thanatos is looking very strong at this stage of the game where typically he's supposed to be falling off. Usually around here, your Thanatos starts to feel like just an execute bot. Like you're there to only finish off these kills. But as these Titans walk down mid, Anthony, he is looking a whole lot more than just a bot.
LWUB certainly feeling more comfortable. 26 minutes, 11-3. Titan advantage, LWUB. 3k gold advantage to LWUB. And now they've got the only Titan on the map, and they're going to push it down mid lane. Almost 4k gold. Let's see what they can do with the push. They are splitting, though, so I guess not too much interest in seeing that Titan all the way through.
And they're instead just going to back up, and little surprising, honestly. They've got most of their cooldowns available, just looking at a couple of blinks, maybe a shell, maybe an Aegis that do despawn, or excuse me, come back online in a couple of seconds. But instead of going for the tower push with those Titans, they're going to group up in this right-hand side and might catch Order of the Blight off guard.
Oh, man.
They seem to have wanted the Gold Fury instead, and are now going to be crossing over, wondering if LWUB are trying to pull this Fire Giant. But they do have a ward over here, so they know it's not going down, which means they can play this a little bit slower, walk over a little bit more controlled, and not fall victim to the bait from LWUB.
That one ward just made a world of difference for Order of the Blight. It changes when and will they go in. That one ward just got so much more value than than 50 to or 120. That's absurd.
That's a 500 gold ward right there. Like, that's
For
not a
sure.
sentry ward. That's a big boy ward. So you see a dash in, we'll get the beads off of Sun Wukong. And LWUB, man, they were a little bit passive in game one. They've got something for their troubles for nothing here on the right-hand side of the map. They could take their calculated risk at this point. They're going to go for it again onto the Sun Wukong.
And they've already got him down to half. The pillars came out but didn't quite catch him. He was able to sidestep. Garrett goes aggressive and a blink forward from Zoriad. Into the sky goes Garrett as well, but the Fields of
Back
Love
up.
is a nice answer. So LWUB is forced to hit the brakes and step back. The Fields of Love was more than a deterrent. That Thanatos lands. That's probably a dead Thana. Instead, Fire Giant time.
Order of the Blight are here and are willing to step forward. They got to do so quickly, though. 75-50 off the Fire Giant. They got to get in here.
The Fire's already down to 6,500. Order the Blight stepping on the outside. LWUB starting to get off of it. They're going to look for aggression, and they're split, and Apple Toast finds Safa. Garrett finds Blue, and Apple Toast is in bad situations, and oh, the slam of the cudgel will clean up the Persephone. Next up, who's it going to be? It looks like it's going to be Cheeto. Zoriad on the slam brings him down and sends him to the grayscale. Only two remain. Make it one. A double kill for Zoriad. Only LeMan remains, and LWUB will move to the Fire Giant. They might even wait a little bit.
Perfect. That is perfect from LWUB there. They lose Apple Toast, who was, you know, melee range with most characters on Order of the Blight there. But point being, they created an opportunity. They forced the beads off of the Sun Wukong. They step up again. They force him to dash out. They force the ult off. They get a good engage off. They force defensive tools out of Order of the Blight, push them into their own tier 2 tower, and then they back up. They're very calm. They say, all right, we got everything we needed. They cannot step up without making some kind of drastic coin flip here. And because of that, they just grab the Fire Giant, wait for Order of the Blight to come back in, and take the fight using the Fire Giant as a tool. That fight was never about getting fire for LWUB. They would take it if they were given it, but that was only pulled to make Order of the Blight step up. They don't have the beats. They don't have the ult on Sun Wukong. They don't have Aegis on Cheeto. They don't have a couple of key ultimate abilities either to help keep them safe for Order of the Blight, which means LWUB can just wait for them to walk in. Bacchus has to use the burp and the flop through the bubble proc after he gets silenced by the Ganesh in order to get into that pit to begin
that
with.
feels bad.
And everything was expended before they got there. LWUB, I wanted them to play more aggressively around these opportunities. I wanted them to make some kind of calculated risk, take some sort of gamble in their favor, and they have absolutely done that here in Game 3 when it matters the most.
A blink forward from Zoriat. Gonna look to maybe create an opening. Didn't find it instantly. I want to say one quick thing. I want to call back to one thing that you said. You wanted coordination from Zoriat and Garrett. You wanted it when it was a Ratatasker. You're getting it with Nike Thanatos, which does not feel like the combo that comes to mind first, but they're certainly doing it. A current problem is that Garrett has to deal with Blue, who was split pushing and almost got to the Phoenix. For Order of the Blight, their big problem is LWUB is knocking on the Phoenix's door, and they're looking okay for it because they don't have Hoombots to deal with. Granted, LWUB without Thanatos will back up and look to reset and strip the towers off the map.
I wonder if they knew the beads timer from Garrett, because they're only now coming off of cooldown, which means that when Garrett blinked into that right Phoenix to defend it against Blue split pushing, he could have dropped Hunbat's ult and just killed Garrett. I think that either they didn't know or he wasn't confident in making that call, but you needed to actually send somebody that had CC immunity on demand to defend against blue. If he played that a little bit more aggressively, if they had that timer written down in chat or maybe message Dingo Dial or something, they absolutely could have broken open the base on the right-hand side. But instead, it's the towers going down in left, tower in mid will also fall, clean up the last one in right too. We saw this in game 2. Order the Blight stripped all the towers, backed up, spent the gold, and then walked up for the next Fire Giant, which was also an EFG due to spawn here in another 2 minutes or so. And LWUB seemed to be doing much the same here, which means that we're back to farming for the next 2 minutes or so. It's going to be a little bit of pressure off of the shoulders of Order the Blight, who would really like to get some more farm under their belts. You're missing a starter item upgrade for Cheeto. You're missing a starter item upgrade for Safa as well in the mid lane. And honestly, past that point, you're mostly kitted to deal with what LWUB have available. Once you get some of these critical spikes, the gold deficit doesn't feel as meaningful. We're talking a couple of power pots maybe for LWUB, but almost everybody except for the tanks are full build on Order the Blight. If they can stall out another 5, maybe 10 minutes at worst, they're absolutely back into this game, Anthony. They might have gotten the towers down, they might have lost one Fire Giant, but Order of the Blight are certainly not out of this just yet.
They are not, but they got a mountain to climb. 15-4 in 33 minutes, and if you know anything about Smite, you know that means the chaos is around the corner, and I'm not just talking the side of the map. I'm looking for pure blood. I'm looking for just an absolute brawl. That's been the most fun part about these two teams. Normally, I want the strategic, slow, smart play. I want chaos right now, Kaizo. It's all I'm looking for. Zoriat runs into Cheeto and gets stunned, gets poked, could fall, has to jump back to safety of his teammates, but will be safe for the time being.
He should have time to back and walk back up, though, as long as LWUB don't step too far forward, knowing that Nike's in base. Order the Blight walking forward. Actually, Blink Hunbat's ult here, using the opportunity.
Oh, and Safa deletes Apple Toast, but can they find more? Because they've got to get something off of it. The opportunity is finally here, but the scythe just hit home, and Bacchus has to back in Dark Pillars for space, but it jumped through from Blue, looking for Ganesh. Can he find it, though? He's got to get past Garrett, and he can't do it, and now Thanos Divine, Storming got one, and they're running forward. LWUB has created the opening we've been looking for. Double kill for Garrett on the Thanatos, and he will escape to safety. Order of the Blight thought they had an opening, but LWUB slammed the door shut, and they're still not fully done. Zoriat jumped in and spread 2 further. Safa and Cheeto just have to get out of there at this point, Kaizo. And this is going to create the opening for Pyro and probably an EFG.
It's only Cheeto and Safa left alive to try to defend that one, and with a full health tank available to make sure that Storming Shadows can get that critical lifesteal off this Pyromancer, they should just be able to walk over and grab this one. And it was an opportunity for Order of the Blight, make no mistake, that was their fight to win after poking out Nike and making her go back to base. But the fact that they just dove too far forward, I mean, the initial execution of Apple Toast on this Persephone was a perfect way to breach that fight. Was their entry frag that they absolutely needed to get that opportunity, but then just a little bit too deep. Blue dove down, trying to finish off the very low health support, but Leeman is very tanky on this Bacchus. He's got the Sentinels upgraded, he's got fully stacked Thebes, he's got a Magi's Blessing as well to help immune some more crowd control, and he just dives a support while Garrett just kills him. I mean, Garrett gets to snowball that fight off of Bloodforge shields because the enemy jungler dives too deep, then he gets a good scythe into traffic and just clips anybody, which allows him to just snowball that fight forward and walk forward with the rest of his team. LWUB could have been put to bed there, man. That was a very scary situation for the Order side team, but instead it's Order of the Blight that end up empty-handed as a result of that engagement.
LWUB is in the best position that they've been in, despite the fact they're constantly winning. At the moment, this is the most dominant that they felt, because again, these are the 2 best teams right now in the lower division for GSL. And I mean, they've been playing like it, but LWUB is just rising to that standard. In Order of the Blight, they went from underdog to dominant in Game 2 to underdog again. They've got to defend. They got to figure out something at the Phoenix Siege.
And it's going to be tough. EFG and a 3k pot just popped for Garrett, which means he cannot be left alone. If he split pushes mid, somebody's got to be there to contend with him, be that blue, be that Frandir on this Nike. I mean, whoever it's going to be, they've got to shut this guy down.
Dark Pillars comes out underneath the tower. Fields of Love for the response. But try to keep LWUB from initiating, so they will step back. The Pillars are the one thing used. They did get Fields of Love, however, which I'm sure they'll take.
Maybe a net positive for them there. Probably a lower cooldown for this Ganesh. He's got actually absolutely a lower cooldown. Yeah. He's got 30% cooldown just waiting for that one to come back up. Oni wave in mid lane, Oni wave in right lane. Oni wave walking into left lane could be their chance to go in.
Asa the Pasta steps up again. Maybe another go button for LWUB, but they're still biding their time, waiting for the right moment. Storming Shadows is getting very poked out, but they do get the left Phoenix, and they get away safely. Zoriat was causing some problems, and those problems were enough to buy time. The poke doesn't quite come through either.
Bombs expended there from LWUB. I think it was at least one, maybe two that went off to grab that left-hand Phoenix. Still have one, but it's on Storming Shadows, and getting him that close to the Phoenix is a bit of a difficult undertaking when you've got Safa just dropping the artillery damage in. Got that Fire Wave walking down the left-hand side of the map, though, Anthony. As long as they can keep that alive, they can keep their health bars somewhat fresh, they should be able to go in again.
And they do. Fear and Evil does find two, but can LWUB respond? So far, the answer is no, but Garrett's trying to change it in the back line. Garrett looks forward, but Apple Toast found one in the front, and Vladimir drops. Now LWUB steps forward, and Zoriat's got the back line in trouble again, and Garrett catches up just to become immortal and chase more down. LWUB's looking for it. It's a triple kill for Garrett at the Titan. Godlike for the Thanatos. You can press every button you've got, Order the Blight, but you can no longer say you're undefeated. LWUB take the set.
And LWUB move to the undisputed #1 spot in the lower division with that 2-1 victory over Order of the Blight. And I gotta be honest with you, Anthony. You told me about the Thanatos. You said the 4-1 could very sneakily get to a 12-1. I think you might have even said 14-1, which is the end stat line for Garrett on this Thanatos. You don't typically attribute this character with getting involved in the mid to late game stages, but it was absolutely Garrett with a slow burn there coming to fruition in the late game stages, making his presence known in these team fights. And LWUB, in pretty convincing fashion, I would say, take that third game. It was very close early on. The objectives were well contested from Order of the Blight, but as soon as they got that EFG, Order of the Blight crumbled and LWUB forced their way into that base.
It was a fiery explosion at the end to talk about the slow burn, and LWUB ultimately got the better. Let's check out the stats and see how we got to this point. And while the 14-1 is exciting, there's a lot of other numbers around it that are quite fascinating. I will let you dive into the deep side of it, however.
It's got to be for me Storming Shadows pairing with Nike. I mean, you've got frontline, you've got backline. Nike was such a critical component in forcing the backline backward. Every single time we saw this Nike doing anything, it was jumping onto Safa, it was standing in front of Cheeto, it was using that slow to force out the cooldowns, be that beads or the escapes, the dashes of the backline. Every single time, it was always huge in the impact in the backline. And then Storming Shadows was just the lone rogue in his own backline, fighting away the Sun Wukong, staying safe and away from the Hunbat's ult. He dashed out of a Hunbat's ult in the middle Phoenix Siege, which is incredible to even think about. Storming Shadows, you talked up the Hachiman, and he absolutely performed. So too did Garrett on the Thanatos. I mean, your star players step up, take on their star roles in their star gods, and absolutely took it to the Order of the Blight here.
I want two more things from you, Kaizo, before we get out of here, as LWUB, again, takes this set 2-1. I mentioned at the very start, the team of the week last week for GSL lower division, it included Vladimir from Order of the Blight in the solo lane. Then we had Garrett, we had Zoriat, we had Asa the Pasta. And then we had Cheeto for ADC. Going into the next week's power rankings, are we looking at an all LWUB power team? And then my final question for you, for Order of the Blight, having been knocked down to second place now, what do you look at changing going forward?
I'll start with the second one because I don't know what you really need to change. This is just an LWUB team that looked incredible throughout this entire set. Even when they were losing, they were doing it gracefully. They made the Fire Giant dance very difficult. This is just a battle of the behemoths, and I don't think that anybody's going to be putting up nearly as much resistance against the Order of the Blight as the Dubs did here. So I think that honestly, you review this VOD, you look at the things you did wrong in very minutia based instances. I'm not talking large macro mistakes that you made because there really weren't any. It was just in the trenches that they made a couple of missteps, maybe some over aggression, maybe some dives that went too deep. Other than that, I think they played phenomenally.
And to go back to the first part, who are we looking at, do you think? Are we looking at an all 5 LWUB team for the power team?
I think that power team, it's got to be Storming Shadows, it's got to be Zariat, and it's got to be oh my god, my mind is blanking here. I do think that you could make a contest for the Order of the Blight Soul Laner as well to
Fradmir.
Fradnir, for him to make the power ranking as well. Even though he lost, the games that he looked good on, he looked transformative,
Certainly.
is I think the word I used previously. So I really do think that this is some of the best talent that this league, that this division at least, has to offer. And if it's all five once again from either or both of these two teams, it's frankly not going to surprise me.
I am on the same page as you, but that's all we've got for you after an incredibly exciting back and forth set between LWUB and Order of the Blight on GSL. I've been Anthony Malum, and alongside me has been Kaizo. Thank you to Rosie for pushing all the buttons and doing it so well. We'll see you next time on GSL for more action.